Chapter 2649. How is that possible? The eighth firmament immortal king was alarmed and afraid. He had clearly moved before Ling Han, but how was Ling Han already blocking his path? Why are you running? Ling Han asked. The eighth firmament immortal king's eyes darted around thrice before he said, I need to pee. I wish to find a place to relieve myself. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. This person was indeed shameless, extremely shameless. He didn't have a good impression of the members of the immortal king's cemetery, not to mention these people were affected by the black chi. Even though they seemed to be very obedient and submissive now, it was because Ling Han's strength was stronger. The eighth firmament immortal monarch would definitely show his ferocious side if they exchanged blows. Ling Han shook his head. Since you're here to kill an outsider like me, why aren't you attacking? The eighth firmament immortal king hurriedly shook his head and said, Senior, you really like to joke. How can a valiant person like you be an outsider? You must be one of us. Ling Han suddenly felt speechless. He casually slashed with his sword, scaring the eighth firmament immortal king into hurriedly retreating. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Each strike was faster than the last. The eighth firmament immortal king only managed to dodge 3 strikes before he was cleaved into 2 by Ling Han. Xiao, Ling Han leaped up and immediately fled far away. After running far enough, he entered the immortal visitor residence. Even though he had been so awe-inspiring and invincible just now, the injuries he had suffered before were not fake. It was just that his fighting spirit was too intense, and that was why he had been suppressing it. Now that the enemies were all dead, he naturally had to rest and recuperate. This silence lasted for 130,000 years. Ling Han was not only recuperating, but also stabilizing his realm. Under the acceleration of the flow of time, 130,000 years was equivalent to 130 million years. Naturally, his realm was completely stabilized and he made considerable progress. Exchanging injuries for injuries and fighting to the death was the best way to improve one's cultivation. Of course, the prerequisite was that one couldn't die or suffer too heavy of an injury. The Empress had similarly stabilized her cultivation level. Because she did not need to recuperate, her advancement was actually slightly faster than Ling Han's, but the difference was not much. After all, at the height of the sixth heaven, without the support of great medicine, it would easily take hundreds of billions of years to advance a single step, so what was 100 million years? Ling Han and the Empress walked out of the immortal visitor residence hand in hand. Their adventure in this place had not ended yet. During this period of time, Ling Han had naturally given Gu Hei's celestial tool to the divine demon sword to swallow. However, the step from celestial tool to heavenly venerable tier precious tool was far too difficult. It was just like the gap between a ninth heaven celestial king and a heavenly venerable tier. It was as vast as the heavens. He really didn't know how much more immortal gold he had to throw in. Gu Hei's wealth was very shocking. After all, he was a major figure in this generation of the martial arts institution, a super emperor star, and he had stepped into the immortal king realm many years ago. This caused even Ling Han to feel a little shocked. Unfortunately, there were no treasures that could increase cultivation level. This was normal. If there were, he would have definitely used up all of them and broken through to the eighth heaven long ago. In that case, Ling Han might not have been able to kill him. Ling Han spent these resources on the improvement of his physique. The cultivation of the indestructible heavens scroll required these strange things. Now, Ling Han's physique had advanced another step, and had just barely reached the height of the seventh heaven. However, compared to his battle prowess, it was still much weaker. Xiaoying Xiong and Miao Hua's wealth should also be considerable. If I can obtain them, who knows, I might be able to bring my indestructible celestial king physique close to consummate. Ling Han and the Empress set out on their way. They still lacked 2 bolts of the 5-element lightning technique. They could really do as they pleased now. Ling Han already had battle prowess of the 9th heaven, and if the Empress added on her celestial tool, her battle prowess would also reach the peak stage of the 8th heaven. Neither one of them had the ability to stand on their own. The pursuit of them didn't stop. The people here had always hated outsiders the most. Unfortunately, they could only serve as food for the 2 of them now. What made Ling Han feel pity was that the people here were too poor, and he wouldn't get any benefits even if he killed them. They left for 7 years, and the number of 8th heaven celestial kings that died in their hands during this period was uncountable. Furthermore, there was no need for Ling Han to make a move at all. The Empress would be able to deal with them. This also caused the danger level of the two of them to soar. In the last 2 years, there were no more 8th heaven celestial kings that came to hunt them down. The strange thing was that 9th heaven celestial kings still hadn't appeared. Ling Han remembered that he had killed quite a few profligate young masters, so why hadn't there been any 9th heaven celestial kings that appeared? Could it be that some super treasure had appeared ahead, and the elites were so busy fighting that they couldn't free themselves to do anything? A few days later, a mountain appeared ahead of them. This was a golden mountain. It was completely resplendent and exuded a dazzling light. If one looked closely, they would see that there were numerous swords stabbed into the mountain, and it was as if they were covered with spikes. There were also bolts of golden lightning circulating between these swords, and they crackled. Metal element lightning, Ling Han and the Empress exchanged a glance. They were both filled with joy. This was the 4th land of inheritance. They continued forward. When they had just arrived at the foot of the mountain, they saw the mountain walls tremble slightly. 7 swords automatically left the mountain, and the tips of the swords turned around and pointed at the two of them. Xiu xiu xiu. The 7 swords moved in unison, and they slashed at Ling Han and the Empress. They weren't stabbing out in an ordinary manner. Instead, they formed a formation. Thus, even though there were only 7 swords, they forcefully released the might of a magnificent army. The Empress moved and fought with the 7 swords. Ping ping ping. In just a short while, the Empress had completely suppressed all 7 swords. She had a bad temper, so she directly used her celestial tool to shatter the 7 swords. Daring to attack her was a great disrespect, so she naturally had to kill them. The two of them continued up the mountain. In just a few steps, another 9 swords left the mountain and began to attack them. In this place, battle was the main theme. Every few steps they took, there would be swords attacking. As the number of swords increased, the formations that they formed became more and more complicated, and their might also became stronger and stronger. Thankfully, both Ling Han and the Empress's battle prowess was incredibly strong, so they were unafraid no matter how many swords there were. There was no one on the mountain. True, if they hadn't obtained the inheritance in the previous 3 places, who would waste time here? There was no benefit in battling with the swords. Wife, have you realized that if we want to obtain the inheritance here, the key might lie in those sword formations? Ling Han said. The Empress nodded. The sword formations were ever-changing, and perhaps they would be able to comprehend the secret of this sword mountain if they fully understood the secrets of the sword formations. From there, they would be able to find the eye of the formation and draw upon the might of this place. Not only would they be able to obtain another inheritance, but even their cultivation level would advance further. And it was precisely because of this consideration that she didn't destroy the swords anymore. The two of them first set aside their utilitarian thoughts and continued to wander around the mountain, battling with different sword formations to obtain comprehension. After a whole half a year, the two of them exchanged a look and broke into a smile at the same time. They had already grasped the secret of this sword mountain. Let's go! They once again walked up the mountain, but the route they took this time was completely different from before, and the strange thing was that no more swords left the mountain and formed a sword formation to attack them. In less than half a day's time, they had reached the summit. It wasn't that they hadn't reached the summit before, but the scenery they saw was completely different. This was the wonder of formations. However, at the center of the summit, there was currently a person sitting in a cross-legged position, surrounded by countless small golden swords. Upon closer inspection, they discovered that these were not physical bodies, but rather bodies of energy. Ling Han raised his brows and said, "Hero Xiao, reading on a phone is more refreshing." Chapter 2650. The person sitting at the top of the mountain was Xiaoing Xiong. Right? He, Gu Hei, and Miao Hua weren't blood-related brothers, and they'd only entered the Immortal King's cemetery for the sake of killing Ling Han. But when a fortuitous encounter appeared, they naturally had to go obtain it on their own. They really did not expect that Xiao Yingxiong would actually be one step ahead of them and obtain the inheritance here. Shua! At this moment, Xiao Yingxiong suddenly opened his eyes. Instantly, two sword shadows flashed in his eyes, and there was even a flash of lightning. He stood up, crackling as the might of lightning radiated from his body. He looked at Ling Han arrogantly and said, "Have you come to seek death?" Ling Han naturally wouldn't show any weakness and said, "I was just about to kill you. I didn't expect to get it so easily." "Ha, are you worthy?" Xiao Yingxiong said disdainfully. Ling Han smiled faintly. "I've already killed Gu Hei. You'll be the second." And Xiao Yingxiong was somewhat surprised. When he had parted ways with Gu Hei, he was already at the late stage of the 7th heavenly layer. After such a long time, he should have reached the peak of the 7th heavenly layer, but he was still killed by Ling Han. This guy's strength has improved greatly again. However, Xiao Yingxiong immediately revealed a prideful expression. "Gu Hei is Gu Hei and I am me." As he spoke, he no longer concealed his strength. Hong, a terrifying aura surged forth like a tsunami, and rays of light also appeared on his body. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8 paths. He was clearly an 8th firmament immortal king. Haha. Xiao Yingxiong laughed heartily. "You're a step too late. Not only have I obtained the inheritance of the sword formation, I've also obtained endless power. I've already broken through to the 8th level 50,000 years ago." It was a level 8 Emperor star that had stabilized its realm, and its battle power was definitely shocking. It could rival level 9 middle stage or even late stage 9 heavens. Ling Han was fearless. He had already stabilized his realm, and his combat power was definitely not weak. "What nonsense are you spouting? Let's fight." He drew his sword and pointed it at Xiao Yingxiong. "Ha, I've broken through to the 8th level, and I've even cultivated a peerless secret technique. I can use you as a blood sacrifice," Xiao Yingxiong said proudly. He hooked his finger and said, "Make your move." Ling Han did not hold back. He exerted force through his legs, and peng, he instantly shot up to a terrifying height. In a flash, he appeared in front of Xiao Yingxiong and stabbed out with his sword. With this full force attack, Ling Han no longer held back his cultivation, and the aura of the 6th heaven spread out. "Oh, 6th heaven stage." Xiao Yingxiong let out a surprised voice. He really hadn't expected that Ling Han's cultivation base would advance so quickly. In fact, it had even far surpassed his own cultivation base. In such a short time, the gap between the two of them had shrunk to 2 heaven stages. This wasn't like the mountain river tier or the severing mundane tier, where one's cultivation level could be rapidly raised by simply eating a few celestial medicines. He too had obtained a great fortune. The origin return to 1 fruit could allow a 9th heaven celestial king to advance into the half-step heavenly venerable tier, and this sword mountain had been accumulated over who knew how many years. With 2 fortuitous encounters, he had only advanced from the 6th level to the 8th level. After his surprise, his killing intent flared. This young man's fortune was even more astonishing than his, and he definitely couldn't be left alive. Otherwise, he would really be surpassed by Ling Han one day. He drew out his spear and used it like a staff. Peng, peng, peng. The spear swept out, and the regulations in the vicinity were all struck into disorder. It contained both his own power and the might of a celestial tool. What was the strength of a celestial king? Regulations. But now that the regulations had been scattered, how could they be used? Xiao Yingxiong's attack was aimed directly at the core, displaying his experienced battle experience. He showed a cold smirk. In the first exchange, he had taken the initiative with his higher cultivation level. Next, he would forcefully crush Ling Han with a thunderous barrage of attacks. Ding! The divine demon sword slashed onto the body of the spear. Multiple seals flickered, and the great Tao collided. Neither of them took a step back, and it was actually a stalemate. Xiao Yingxiong was really shocked this time. Ling Han actually had the power to stand on equal footing with him. How was this possible? The regulations had already been scattered by him, so where had he drawn power from? It should be known that if a celestial king couldn't use regulations, they would actually only be in the severing mundane tier. Ling Han exploded and his right arm shook. Peng, he was instantly sent flying by Xiaoying Xiong. He drew a sword flower. So what if I'm in the sixth heaven? Xiaoying Xiong was speechless at first and then said, now I believe that you killed Gu He. Your body technique is extremely astonishing, and added with the power of regulations, you are not inferior to me in terms of power. He was a super emperor star. If he was not even willing to admit this little bit of truth, then it would be impossible for him to stand at such a high level. However, I can still kill you. His eyes shone with divine light, and he was filled with confidence. Ling Han laughed loudly. Don't say it the other way around. I am the one who is going to kill you. In your dreams. Xiaoying Xiong thrust out his spear. Previously, when they were in the academy, Xiaoying Xiong was equal to Gu He and Miao Hua. Even if there was a difference in strength between the three of them, the gap between them was minuscule. But now, he had advanced into the eighth heaven, and had even stabilized his cultivation level, so his battle prowess was definitely not something that Gu He could compare with. The spear stabbed, swept, blocked, and collided with regulations, and was incredibly terrifying. Ling Han was at an absolute disadvantage in terms of regulations. The gap of 2 cultivation levels was something he could not make up for, but his body technique was too powerful. Furthermore, he did not rely on external objects, and did not need to borrow power from heaven and earth. This was true strength of his own body. He unsheathed the divine demon sword, and controlled the 3 lightning technique with his left hand, blasting it towards Xiaoying Xiong. You actually also grasped this kind of lightning technique. Xiaoying Xiong was astonished. He had not obtained this kind of inheritance before. It was only after coming here that he had obtained it by chance. But Ling Han actually also knew lightning techniques. Although they were different from what he had grasped, he could clearly feel that they were of the same origin. I am going to kill you, search your soul, and obtain all of your inheritance. He laughed loudly. Ling Han smirked coldly. You really think too highly of yourself. Xiaoying Xiong did not speak anymore. As his hands danced, the divine spear was completely activated, and the might of a celestial tool was fully displayed. Ling Han was not weak either. His own battle prowess was no weaker than Xiaoying Xiong's, and the divine demon sword was even more so stronger than normal celestial tools. After a few thousand collisions, there was a ding, and a corner of the divine spear was actually broken off. Xiaoying Xiong was greatly shocked, and hurriedly chased after the broken corner, but was blocked by Ling Han, and could not do so no matter what. After a long struggle, this broken corner was taken by Ling Han. Xiaoying Xiong looked pained. That was divine metal. Although it had been broken off, divine metal had the ability to repair itself. As long as enough time was given, this piece of corner could still be fused back. But now that it had been taken away by Ling Han, unless he killed Ling Han, there was no way he could take it back. They were both celestial tools, but why was his own inferior to Ling Han's? Could it be that it was forged from devouring metal? An expression of astonishment spread across his face. Only devouring metal could swallow divine metal to increase its quality, surpass divine metal, and finally become a heavenly venerable tier-level material. He looked at Ling Han, an expression of extreme envy on his face. That was devouring metal. In the end, it would become a heavenly venerable tier-level material, but now it had actually fallen into the hands of a sixth heaven celestial king. What kind of luck was this? Did this mean that the fortune of heaven and earth was taking care of him? Xiaoying Xiong took a deep breath. So what if Ling Han was a favored child of heaven and earth? He had absolute strength, so he would naturally be able to snatch it away. Chapter 2651. Die. Xiaoying Xiong exploded forth with his full strength, attacking Ling Han. He stabbed out with his spear, but 7 streaks of golden sword light shot out from the tip of the spear, and there were also lightning entwined around them. It was extremely strange. This was the inheritance he had obtained in this sword mountain, the Golden Gung Thunder. The mental attack also surged over, incomparably fierce. Ling Han could not help but feel pain in his mind, and his vision darkened. The mental impact of a stage 8 Emperor star was simply too terrifying, and it was not something that Gu Hui could compare to. However, he had advanced the indestructible heaven scroll a step further. Although it had not reached the height of the 8th heaven, it had, after all, improved, and his ability to resist spiritual attacks was naturally strengthened. He guarded his mind tightly, and the divine demon sword slashed over as he launched a powerful counterattack. The two of them fought fiercely. In terms of strength, there was not much difference between them, but Ling Han definitely had the upper hand. This was because his divine demon sword had been forged from devouring gold metal, and its sharpness had already surpassed that of a celestial tool. As time passed, any celestial tool would be sliced and shattered by it. After another few thousand moves, Xiao Yingxiong lost another corner of his spear. This was something that he could not bear. If his celestial tool shattered, how could he block Ling Han, who possessed the divine demon sword? "Just you wait!" Xiao Yingxiong roared. With a thrust of his spear, he forcefully forced back Ling Han before turning to leave. "Once I obtain the lightning inheritance, it will be the day you die." He couldn't take down Ling Han at all and would only suffer losses instead. Thus, he made a prompt decision to leave without the slightest hesitation. Ling Han did not chase after him. He was not stronger than Xiao Yingxiong, and it was only because of the divine demon sword that he was slightly stronger. After obtaining the inheritance of this place, the more lightning techniques you fuse with, the more powerful they will be, Ling Han said to the Empress. Xiao Yingxiong would not be able to run away anyway, so he only needed to increase his own strength. The Queen nodded. Her desire to become stronger was even greater than Ling Han's. That was because Ling Han had been fighting alone just now, and she had not been able to help much. She was extremely proud. How could she tolerate such a thing? The two of them arrived at the center of the mountain peak and replaced Xiao Yingxiong's previous position. They had already comprehended all the secrets of the sword array. Instantly, golden runes appeared in their minds, but this time, no power entered their bodies, because all of it had been absorbed by Xiao Yingxiong. If he wanted more power to pour into his body, then he might have to wait for a great era or two for this sword mountain to recover. On the other hand, even if Xiao Yingxiong were to return to the past, he would only be able to obtain the inheritance of 3 types of lightning arts, and would not be able to obtain the infusion of power. Obtaining the secret technique was very fast. Because there was no such thing as imbuing one's body with power, only a few days' time, Ling Han and the Empress had already obtained the inheritance. They were worried that Xiao Yingxiong would turn around and launch a sneak attack while they were cultivating, so they left the Sword Mountain and then entered the Immortal Visitor Residence. Tens of thousands of years later, the two of them finally mastered the Golden Gung Lightning and combined it with the 3 lightning arts to form the 4 lightning arts. Even if only one of the 5 elements is missing, the difference in power is still too great. Ling Han shook his head, appearing to be very regretful. The indestructible heaven scroll was also a technique created by a heavenly venerable, so how powerful was it? The 5-element lightning arts should definitely not be weak, but Ling Han reckoned that if he cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll to a corresponding level, the 4 lightning arts would definitely not be able to break through the defense of the indestructible heaven scroll. Then there was only one reason, and that was that the 5 elements were not complete. Not only would this heavenly venerable technique not be able to display its full power, but it would only be able to display 1/10 of its power. From 4 to 5, this was a qualitative change. Then quickly obtain the 5th inheritance, the Empress said. Ling Han nodded. We still have to snatch it before Xiao Yingxiong. Otherwise, although he could obtain the inheritance, he would lack the infusion of power. They left the Immortal Visitor Residence and continued on their way. Out of the 5 inheritances, 4 had already appeared, and it could be seen that this Yuangu tomb was also about to reach the end. Mountains and rivers flashed past beneath them, and the two of them did not pay attention to the people on the way. Now they only had one goal, and that was the 5th inheritance ground. Although they did not waste time on others, there would always be people who obtained information too slowly. They had just received the news that the two of them were outsiders, and specially came out to kill them. How could an 8th heaven immortal king be a match for the two of them? Naturally, they were immediately suppressed. However, the two of them also learned some secrets from these immortal kings. It was said that the end of the Yuan-Gu tomb not only contained the inheritance of a peerless cultivation technique, but also a passage to leave the immortal king cemetery. However, the prerequisite was that one had to reach the ninth heaven. Therefore, all the ninth heaven immortal kings had already gone there. Ling Han somewhat believed it because he did not see a single ninth heaven immortal king come out to attack them. However, whether there was a peerless inheritance or a passage to leave was still debatable. Desolate Moon had brought people to this Yuan-Gu tomb, and he had even thrown out 3 9 transformations heaven scriptures. If it was said that countless immortal kings had to work together to open a passage to enter the Yuan-Gu tomb, Ling Han believed it, but to do so, they would have to give up 3 9 transformations heaven scriptures. Ling Han absolutely did not believe it, because as long as the news was released, the tomb itself would definitely be extremely attractive. The end of the Yuan-Gu tomb should hide the truth. Ling Han looked at the Empress, and the Empress nodded at him. With their current strength, they could attempt it. 7 months later, an incomparably majestic palace appeared in front of them. It towered into the clouds and was surrounded by bolts of lightning. It was majestic and mighty. This was the end, because beyond the palace was an endless void that could not be crossed. From the outside, the palace was extremely quiet, like a land of death. All the ninth heaven immortal kings were inside. It's really strange. If there are so many ninth heaven immortal kings inside, why isn't there any commotion? Ling Han muttered. The Empress tightened her grip on the immortal artifact, and her left hand held Ling Han's. Ling Han smiled, held Empress's slender hand, and strode forward. The palace was too tall, so it was a long way from the beginning to the end. When they arrived in front of the palace's entrance, they saw a group of people attacking the entrance with all their might. Strangely, the palace's entrance was clearly open, but there were bolts of lightning pouring down like a waterfall. There were 4 people in this group, and they attacked together, but the falling lightning was not affected at all. They could not penetrate it at all. When they sensed Ling Han and the Empress approaching, the 4 immediately stopped and turned around. Ling Han could not help but smile. This world was too small. They were Wang Dongsun and the others, the spoiled brats from Ji-Kai City. There had been more than 4 of them previously, and they had probably died along the way. After all, this was not Ji-Kai City, a place where they could do as they pleased. Li Long. Wang Dongsun immediately called out when he saw Ling Han. When Xiaoying Xiong and the others had ambushed Ling Han, they had seen Ling Han's true appearance, so he recognized him at a glance. Ling Han said indifferently, "If you don't want to die, scram immediately." What a madman! Wang Dongsun was filled with displeasure. He was a 7th heaven celestial king, and even Ling Han had to address him as senior or lord. Now, however, he dared to tell him to piss off. Although Li Long was indeed extraordinary for being able to escape from Xiaoying Xiong and the others, how could he compare to Wang Dongsun? "I won't behead you for ruining my father's plans." Chapter 2653. Even in this palace, the heavenly tribulation came as it pleased, extremely willful. However, this hall was indeed extraordinary. In theory, the heavenly tribulation should have descended outside the hall. Then, a bolt of lightning would have struck down and destroyed the entire hall. This was also the reason why the heavenly tribulation had to be carried out in the wilderness. But here, the heavenly tribulation directly appeared on the roof of this floor. Dark clouds were dense, and lightning interweaved. Very strange. Could it be that the heavenly tribulation knew that it couldn't strike the palace, so it could only directly appear on this floor? It was not impossible, because the power of the heavenly tribulation had a limit, which was the peak of the 9th heaven, but a celestial venerable could surpass this limit, so how could the measures set by a celestial venerable be destroyed by heavenly tribulation? Why were celestial venerables hated by heaven and earth? It was because celestial venerables broke the rules of heaven and earth. For a moment, various thoughts turned in Ling Han's mind, but he immediately faced them with awe. Quang, the first bolt of lightning had already fallen, reaching the battle prowess of the middle stage of the 9th heaven. Ling Han faced the attack. He used the 5-element thunder technique, actually drawing the power of the heavenly tribulation. On the other side, he also drew the divine demon sword. His cultivation level had increased, so the power of the divine demon sword naturally had to increase as well. In his mind, the celestial seed was undergoing the seventh metamorphosis. Lightning continued to strike, but the majority of its energy was absorbed by the divine demon sword and the five-element thunder technique. However, how could a ninth heaven-level heavenly tribulation be so easy to deal with? Ling Han was still struck riddled with wounds by the overflowing lightning power. In comparison, his indestructible celestial king body that barely reached the seventh level was really a bit weak, and seemed powerless in front of the destructive power of the ninth heaven level. A day later, the heavenly tribulation dissipated. Ling Han felt his own power, and couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile. This breakthrough can be said to be the smallest increase in my strength in history. Because the energy in the plain scroll had been exhausted, his physical skills were still at the same level. However, his previous combat power was mainly supported by his physical skills. It had reached the limit of the early stage of the ninth heaven, close to the middle stage. This time, only the power of regulation increased. However, the power of regulation was originally only at the peak stage of the eighth heaven. Now, it had indeed stepped into the ninth heaven, but it was only at the early stage of the ninth heaven. After fusing with his body arts, Ling Han's battle prowess reached the middle stage of the ninth heaven. It could be said that the increase was very small. This is also because the gap between the ninth heaven and the eighth heaven is too big. Coupled with the physical technique, it made my breakthrough feel like I didn't break through at all. If he still had the plain scroll, then with the improvement of his physical skills, even if his battle prowess didn't reach the peak of level 9, it definitely wouldn't be a problem for him to reach the late stage. But Ling Han raised his hand, activating the five elemental lightning technique. Gold, green, black, red, yellow, the five colors intertwined. After that, a white bolt of lightning flashed, instantly transforming into a 9-colored bolt of immortal lightning. It danced in his palm, able to transform into any form. The five elemental lightning gathers together, forming a qualitative change. The power of a single strike is enough to let me burst out with the destructive power of a peak ninth celestial. I have never seen such a powerful secret technique. As expected of a celestial venerable treasured technique. However, with my current strength, I can at most unleash 9 strikes. This is also because this celestial venerable treasured technique is too powerful. If I can obtain all the 9 transformations heaven scriptures and circulate them separately, then my explosive power can last for a longer time. What a pity, there are still 6 missing. Rather than feeling regretful here, why don't I try Wall's model and see if I can directly extract the 6 kinds of intrinsic power? Ling Han immediately put aside the pity and began to think about how to solve the problem. In any case, the Empress was still in seclusion, so he had plenty of time. Ling Han activated Wall's model. He originally used this kind of cultivation technique to absorb the energy in the plain scroll, but now he placed it in this entire world. Back in the celestial realm, Ling Han had tried to do this, but he didn't succeed at that time. However, at that time, Ling Han hadn't become a celestial king yet, and the celestial realm was only a super low level plane, while this was a super high level plane. There was too much difference, so it was worth a try. Ling Han sat cross-legged. This time, he didn't enter the celestial visitor abode because there was the barrier of divine metal, and it was inconvenient to communicate with the heaven and earth. He sat like a rock, and even used the flow of time to accelerate. As for whether he would encounter enemies, he was completely unconcerned. With his present strength, even if he encountered a peak stage 9th heaven celestial king, he would be able to escape easily. In fact, if he suddenly used the 5 elements lightning technique, even a peak stage 9th heaven celestial king might die at his hands. 10 years, 100 years, 700 years, Ling Han still couldn't sense the slightest shred of the intrinsic power of the origin world. This was very normal. In the first place, the 6 great intrinsic powers could only be sensed, grasped, and used by heavenly venerables, and they weren't even first-step heavenly venerables, because first-step heavenly venerables could only use the power unique to each plane. From a certain perspective, they could only be considered a fake heavenly venerables. Ling Han was only at the 7th heaven, and he wanted to reach the heavens in a single step. But Ling Han was no fool. He naturally had his reasons for doing so. It was because he had once absorbed the energy of virtual particles, and added with the fact that he had a crystal-like wall that could only be created after several hundred epochs, and had spent countless years researching the model in a high-level plane. Perhaps he had a chance. Ling Han became more and more relaxed, and he entered a state where his mind was wandering. A particle suddenly surged into his body. In terms of volume, it was pitifully small, but in terms of quality, it was extremely terrifying. Such a small volume contained a power that could destroy heaven and earth. This particle exploded, turning into surging violent energy that circulated within Ling Han's body. Wah! Ling Han's body instantly trembled, and he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. He felt as if at least 2/3 of the bones in his body had been broken in an instant, and he had almost died. This was the energy of virtual particles. That particle was virtual particles, and he had absorbed one. However, the energy contained within virtual particles was simply too terrifying. It was so small that it couldn't even be seen by the naked eye. When it exploded, it had almost killed Ling Han. It had to be known that he was a 7th heaven celestial king. His battle prowess was comparable to the middle stage of the 9th heaven, and his physique was also as strong as the 7th heaven. Yet he couldn't even withstand a single blow. However, Ling Han wasn't alarmed. Instead, he was delighted. He had drawn out virtual particles. If this was said out loud, there would definitely be no one who would believe it. Even a first-step heavenly venerable tier couldn't possibly come into contact with the 6 essential elements, but a 7th heaven celestial king had done it. Cough, cough. Ling Han laughed loudly, but blood continued to flow out of his mouth. He hurriedly channeled the indestructible heaven scroll to repair his body, and then guided the violent energy in his body to temper his body. The present him still didn't have the right to directly absorb the energy of virtual particles, and could only use the method of tempering his body to strengthen his body. Doing this was equivalent to taking a big detour, but to be able to come into contact with the power of heavenly venerable tier when he was only at the celestial king tier, to say nothing of taking a big detour, even if he had to take 100 detours, it would definitely be worth it with only 10% of the effort. I'm too weak, and that's why I've used 1,000 years to draw out a single virtual particle. Dimensional scrolls are still better. Not only can they be drawn out at any time, but the power is also gentle, and not as violent as wild ones. Ling Han shook his head, and after complaining for a while, he once again began to cultivate. Chapter 2654. Without the Dimension Scroll, directly absorbing the intrinsic power of the origin world was too difficult. Even if Ling Han was freakishly talented, even if he had long since come into contact with the energy of Void Child, he still needed over 1,000 years to be able to draw in a single Void Child. However, this was only the beginning of the agony. The violent energy exploded, directly causing serious damage to his divine body. Ling Han continuously cycled through this process. After painstakingly drawing a virtual energy, he would blow himself up, and then repair his body while drawing out the power within to temper his physique. Without a doubt, this caused him great pain, but Ling Han truly felt the improvement of his physical arts. Although this was very slow, far from being comparable to drawing the Dimension Scroll, it undoubtedly opened a treasure trove. The Dimension Scroll would be used up, but as long as the origin world was not destroyed, the second method could continue forever. What was the most important thing? Ling Han could already sense and absorb virtual energy. This meant that as long as he reached the first step of the Heavenly Venerable tier, advancing to the second step of the Heavenly Venerable tier was a sure thing. Another 7 million years later, the Empress came out of seclusion. She had also successfully fused the 5-element lightning technique and had reached the bottleneck of level 7. The Empress was undergoing tribulation. It was very difficult for her. The higher her cultivation level, the more violent the heavenly tribulation. Moreover, she was a super emperor star, and the might of the heavenly tribulation far surpassed her cultivation level. Fortunately, relying on her grasp of the five-element lightning, the threat of the lightning attacks to her was much smaller. The Empress passed the Great Tribulation without any mishaps, and first entered the Celestial Visitor Lodge to stabilize her cultivation level. Meanwhile, Ling Han had already completed this step. He stood up and strode forward. It was very likely that this palace hid the ultimate secret, and he was very interested. Just as he stood up, he heard rustling footsteps behind him. He turned around, and his gaze involuntarily twitched. Xiaoing Xiong, Miao Hua. These two actually walked together and entered the palace together. According to the primordial heavenly venerable, only by mastering the 4 types of lightning techniques outside could one pass through the door of lightning. Then, these two should have also inherited the first 4 types of lightning techniques. After all, they were super emperor stars, so this bit of comprehension was naturally not a problem. However, it was said that all the level 9 heaven celestial kings were here, so how did they pass through the door? Can a 9 heavens pass it? Many doubts flashed through Ling Han's mind, but his face revealed a dense killing intent. Are you two here to deliver your heads? Wrong, I'm here to kill you, said Xiaoing Xiong coldly. He directly took out his immortal spear. His luck was not as good as Ling Han's. He had to search outside for a very, very long time before he managed to obtain the legacies of the 4 types of lightning techniques and arrived at this final destination. Coincidentally, he actually met Miao Hua here. He really did not intentionally go looking for him. Let's settle our grudges today. Ling Han held the divine demon sword in his hand. If they left the cemetery of the Celestial King, the heavenly venerable of the martial institution would definitely not allow them to kill each other. Thus, they had to settle their grudges here. Killing you is as easy as slaughtering a chicken, Miao Hua said disdainfully. He also took out his immortal staff. The aura of a stage 8 celestial was as majestic as the sea. He had broken through to stage 8 heaven tens of millions of years ago, and after so many years, he had also cultivated to the late stage of stage 8 heaven, and his battle prowess had soared straight to the late stage of stage 9 heaven. The higher one's cultivation level, the weaker one's ability to surpass cultivation levels. Only a super emperor star could be so powerful. Xiaoing Xiong also released his aura to his heart's content. His cultivation level was also in the late stage of stage 8 heaven. Ling Han did not bat an eyelid. He raised the divine demon sword with his right hand, stretched out his left hand, and slightly crooked his finger. Come! Arrogant! The 2 great prodigies smirked coldly, and both attacked. One thrust with his spear, and the other swept with his staff. They did not need to cooperate. At their level, they could casually attack with great coordination. Ling Han brandished his sword to parry the attack. Wang, the divine demon sword blocked the staff and spear at the same time. A massive force surged, and instantly pushed his arm down, only stopping when it was about to reach his face. He roared loudly again, and his body technique burst forth. Peng, he sent the spear and staff flying at the same time. 7 rays of light wrapped around him, and he was like a god. Stage 7 heaven. Xiaoing Xiong and Miao Hua were both stunned, especially Xiaoing Xiong. When he had battled with Ling Han previously, the latter had just broken through to stage 6 heaven, but now he was shockingly stage 7 heaven. After so many years, he had only cultivated from the early stage of stage 8 heaven to the late stage, not even reaching the peak stage. He still needed at least 50 million years to break through to stage 9 heaven, and this was already ridiculously fast, astonishingly fast. Compared to Ling Han, wasn't this like the crawl of a snail? Going by this, when he advanced into stage 9 heaven, Ling Han should also be about to break through to this cultivation level. He turned to Miao Hua and said, "No matter the cost, we must destroy this person's soul today." All right. Miao Hua nodded. He only stared at Ling Han and raised the divine staff in his hand high up. Wung, 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 the seals on the staff lit up one after another. Staff to the heavens, Celestial King bows his head. He attacked. Hong, the divine staff smashed down. With his stage 9 heaven battle prowess, it was enough to completely activate the power of divine metal. As the staff swept out, a brilliant golden light shone, and at this moment, he also used a spiritual attack. He was the first to attack. Xiao Yingxiong was preparing at the side, seizing the opening that Ling Han revealed, and then followed up with a spear, taking Ling Han's life. The spiritual attack arrived, completely ignoring the distance between them, immediately causing Ling Han to involuntarily grab his head. Ha! Miao Hua laughed loudly. He was filled with confidence in his spiritual attack. As long as his opponent did not similarly use a spiritual attack to annihilate him, it could easily cause his opponent's head to twist in pain, causing them to lose their ability to react. In serious cases, it would directly pierce through their consciousness, taking away their life. Ling Han had already been hit. His staff descended, wanting to take this opportunity to smash Ling Han into a meat patty. So simple? Xiao Yingxiong revealed a puzzled expression. Before this, he had exchanged blows with Ling Han, and the two of them had been evenly matched. However, his opponent's immortal tool was the devouring metal, forcing him to flee. Was Ling Han so weak that he could not even withstand a single blow? Careful, there might be a trap, he hurriedly reminded. Miao Hua was disdainful. Ling Han had already been hit by his spiritual attack. Even if Ling Han had intentionally shown him an opening, he would still turn it into a true opening and send him on his way. The staff descended. Ling Han suddenly raised his head. 9-colored lightning flickered on his left hand, and he pressed down on the divine staff, forcibly catching a celestial tool with his bare hands. Who do you think you are? You're purely seeking death. Miao Hua smirked coldly, and his staff descended. Even if this was a trap that Ling Han had set for him, he was still too clever for his own good. Ling Han's palm had already grabbed the divine staff. Under the destructive power of a celestial tool added with the shock of a 9th heaven tier power, Ling Han's palm instantly exploded. Even a 7th heaven tier physique was completely insufficient. However, Miao Hua couldn't help but tremble all over. That was because a terrifying power of lightning surged into his body through the divine staff. Not only did it cause his whole body to go numb, but his bones and internal organs were also instantly shattered by the power of lightning. Just at this moment, Ling Han drew his sword. His face was expressionless, as if the hand that had been shattered was not his at all. His eyes were cold enough to cause one to shiver. Stop! Xiao Yingxiong hurriedly moved, wanting to stop Ling Han. But if he moved now, how could he make it in time? The divine demon's sword directly pierced into Miao Hua's head. Chapter 2655. Miao Hua stared blankly at Ling Han. He was completely unable to accept such a result. Elites and freaks like them could be said to already stand at the peak of the celestial Tao, and yet they actually used such a method of fighting with one move and causing both sides to be wounded. No, Ling Han was wounded, but he was dead. He was still filled with confusion. Why was Ling Han not affected in the slightest when he had clearly suffered a mental attack, and his hand had clearly been blown off, yet he could still be so calm? Moreover, the power that Ling Han had shot out directly shattered his bones and internal organs, causing him to instantly lose the ability to react. That was why he could not even make a move to dodge when facing Ling Han's attack. He died with everlasting regret. It was at this moment that Xiao Yingxiong finally attacked, his spear piercing towards Ling Han. Ling Han retreated, and his physical arts burst forth. Peng! His figure instantly accelerated, causing the tip of the spear to miss by a hair's breadth. He looked at Miao Hua and said, "If you knew what I've experienced these years, you wouldn't be surprised by my endurance. Also, I've completely cultivated the 5-element lightning technique. This is a heavenly venerable realm treasure technique, so it's normal that you can't withstand it." In these 5 million years, Ling Han's body would explode once every 1,000 years. Compared to this kind of pain, what was a severed hand? And if one endured this kind of pain many times, what was a mental attack? Like this kind of attack, if one endured it many times, they would naturally have an immunity. Miao Hua still could not let go. He slowly exhaled. This was his resentment that would not dissipate, and was unwilling to die. Yet his head tilted, and he died completely. With his mind destroyed, even a ninth heaven celestial king would definitely die. Ling Han casually removed the spatial god tool on Miao Hua's body and channeled the indestructible heaven scroll. His severed hand immediately began to slowly regrow, but it was very slow because it had been destroyed by a celestial tool. The terrifying destructive power was still wreaking havoc, preventing the wound from healing. Xiaoxiong took a deep breath. I never thought that your strength had actually reached such a level. In the blink of an eye, Miao Hua, who was equally famous as him, was dead. It wasn't that Miao Hua's strength was too weak, but rather that Ling Han was too desperate, directly exchanging injury for injury, exchanging life for life, causing Miao Hua to be completely unprepared. You're not afraid of spiritual attacks, and you've even completely grasped a heavenly sovereign precious technique. I've underestimated you, said Xiaoxiong. However, he was not afraid at all. He tightened his grip on the spear as his battle intent surged. Ling Han smiled faintly. Actually, he did not need to put in so much effort, but even if his battle prowess could suppress Xiaoxiong and Miao Hua, if the two of them decided to escape, one on the left and one on the right, which one would he chase after? No matter which one he chased, the other would escape. If he wanted to kill them again in the future, it would be difficult. Thus, Ling Han decided to risk it all. Even if Xiaoxiong managed to escape, so what? He was confident that he would be able to kill Xiaoxiong even if he had to chase him to the ends of the earth. Furthermore, Ling Han might not necessarily be a match for the two of them if they were to join forces, not to mention that he still had to kill them. If that's the case, you might as well kneel down and accept your death, Ling Han said coolly. I'm not Miao Hua, Xiaoxiong sneered. I'm not as arrogant as him. Then let's fight. Ling Han's feet shot out. Peng, he instantly exploded with astonishing power, charging in front of Xiaoxiong and stabbing out with his sword. Ding! Xiaoxiong raised his spear and counterattacked, blocking Ling Han's attack. It's just as I expected. Although you've broken through to the 7th level, your battle prowess has not increased by a single level. Xiaoxiong laughed loudly. Otherwise, he would have fled without another word. Ling Han's sword was like rain. In these 5 million years, his body techniques had indeed improved a little, but not by much. After all, he had relied on himself to cultivate, so how could he possibly improve so quickly? He did not care at all. Right now, he only wanted to stall Xiaoxiong. When his left hand regenerated and he used the 5-elemental lightning technique, Xiaoxiong would regret it. Watching from the sidelines and personally experiencing it were two completely different things. The complete heavenly sovereign precious technique was too terrifying. The two of them fought. Although Xiaoxiong spoke beautifully, after being unable to suppress Ling Han several times, he no longer had the intention to continue fighting. Because Ling Han held the divine demon sword, which could counter his celestial tool, fighting was too disadvantageous for him. He did not linger, and immediately turned to leave. Ling Han chased. This time was different. He had already obtained the inheritance of the 5-elemental lightning technique, and had no reason to stay. One fled, and the other chased. Xiaoxiong's goal was very clear. He rushed to the highest level of this palace, searching for the legendary passage to leave the cemetery of the Celestial King. Although he could not kill Ling Han, in less than 100 million years, he had soared from the early stage of the 7th level to the late stage of the 8th level. Wasn't this improvement great? Enough, he had to leave the cemetery of the Celestial King first. In any case, he could enter again in the future to obtain the last inheritance of the 5-elemental lightning technique. A person like him was naturally able to pick up and let go, and knew when to give and take. Ling Han chased closely, the divine demon sword slashing swiftly. He definitely would not let Xiaoxiong leave. They went all the way up and soon arrived at the 18th level, then the 20th level, the 30th level. When they arrived at the 33rd level, they were shocked and all stopped in their tracks. Because this level was no longer empty. There were giant eggs on the ground, about the height of 2 people, and a little thicker than having to wrap their arms around them. They were completely jet black, and there was also a black aura rising from them, extremely strange. They were densely packed, almost endless. It was said that the ultimate inheritance was hidden here, as well as the path to leave the cemetery of the Celestial King. How could it be such a scene? Xiao Yingxiong glanced at Ling Han, and his figure rose again. Ling Han raised his left hand, and saw that the originally bare broken wrist had already grown a new one, and now the last finger had also completely grown out. This meant that the injury that Miao Hua's strike had brought him had been completely swept away. Ling Han gathered power slightly and his legs bent. Then, with a pung, he suddenly exploded. At the same time, he channeled the regulations of space and time. Now that his injuries were gone, he no longer had any reservations, and completely released his power. Although Xiao Yingxiong's back was facing Ling Han, his divine sense was naturally all-encompassing, so he could hear everything clearly. Ling Han chased after him at a frightening speed, his sword stabbing towards Xiao Yingxiong's back. He had no choice but to block the strike, or else he would be seeking death. Ding! He turned around and struck out with his spear, blocking the blade of the divine demon sword to avoid the sharpness of the blade. Boom! How terrifying was the battle prowess of the two great prodigies. Their clash instantly set off a violent shockwave that surged out in all directions. The giant eggs nearby were the first to bear the brunt of the attack. All of them cracked open, but what was strange was that only the outer layer was broken. When the black gas dissipated, an almost transparent shell could be seen inside. At first, Ling Han wanted to follow up with another strike, but when he saw the object inside the shell, he couldn't help but pause. There were actually people inside that shell. There was a person inside each egg, and they seemed to be in a state of deep sleep. Their hands were wrapped around their knees, forming a ball, and their bodies were completely naked. However, there were shockingly 9 rays of light entwined around them. 9th Heaven Celestial King Heaven, there was shockingly a 9th Heaven Celestial King hidden inside each giant egg. It was as if they were hibernating, and some kind of strange change was happening. Ling Han finally understood where those 9th Heaven Celestial Kings who had not come out for a long time had gone. However, knowing was knowing, he only felt even more puzzled in his heart. What the fuck is going on? Chapter 2657. Xiao Yingxiong let out an enraged roar. All of the veins on his body bulged, and his black hair soared into the sky. He had already activated the complete Heavenly 9 transformation scripture, and his battle prowess was terrifying. But how could the complete Empyrean technique be used all the time? Even someone as strong as Imperial Void could only maintain the fish dragon art for a limited period of time. Xiao Yingxiong was not a 9th firmament immortal king, so the time he could circulate the 9 transformations heavenly scripture was naturally shorter. The burden on him was even greater. Some of the blood vessels directly exploded. Blood flowed out, but it turned into numerous symbols that supported his body, making his battle prowess even more powerful. Hong, the immortal spear turned into a divine dragon, baleful energy rushing into the heavens. At this moment, Xiao Yingxiong was incomparably powerful and had completely suppressed Ling Han. This was a complete Empyrean technique. If he didn't use a complete Empyrean technique to resist, how could he withstand it? Ling Han's eyes flashed. He was considering whether he should use the 5 elemental lightning art. But if he used it on Xiao Yingxiong, how would he be able to fight against Huang Yu? Although this person had yet to make a move, Ling Han believed that his strength was absolutely incomparably powerful. Taking a step back, if Huang Yu awakened all the 9th firmament immortal kings here, then Ling Han would have no choice but to flee. With the 5 elemental lightning art in hand, he was confident that he could carve out a bloody path for himself. Xiao Yingxiong, however, didn't think too much about it. His eyes were filled with black light, and more of it gradually filled his entire eye sockets. It was as if he had lost his mind and become a complete killing tool. Sure enough, the black gas seemed to be able to increase one's combat power, but it was actually a poisonous candy. Now, Xiao Yingxiong was suffering the consequences of his own actions. Could the current Xiao Yingxiong still be considered himself? Xiao Yingxiong's skin continuously exploded. He had been circulating the 9 transformations heaven scripture, but it was impossible for him to continuously circulate the celestial sovereign technique. Otherwise, he would definitely have to pay a huge price. Xiao Xiong was now using self-mutilation to maintain the circulation of the heavenly sovereign technique in exchange for terrifying combat strength. Ling Han had no choice but to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll. He didn't want to use the 5-element lightning for the time being. Boom boom boom, his body was covered in golden runes, which increased his defense infinitely, allowing him to take Xiao Xiong's attack head-on without being injured. However, Ling Han would only be able to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll for about 2 hours. What would he do then? Huang Yu laughed. He was like a bystander who had nothing to do with the show. Paon of Xiao Xiong's fingers exploded, but his blood and qi transformed, allowing him to continue circulating the 9 transformations heaven scripture. A wisp of black qi spread out from his broken finger, replacing his finger as if it had never been broken. Very quickly, another finger exploded, but it was replaced by another wisp of black qi. When all 10 of Xiao Xiong's fingers had exploded, his toes started to explode, followed by his other bones. Every time a bone exploded, a black aura would replace it, allowing him to maintain his human form and the circulation of the 9 transformations heaven scripture. 2 hours quickly passed, and Ling Han was no longer able to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll. The golden symbols on his body were faintly discernible, and aside from his head, the rest of Xiao Xiong's body had been completely replaced by black qi. Huang Yu let out a sigh. If we keep fighting, we'll really be crippled. Forget it, let's step aside. As he said this, Xiao Xiong did not obey his orders. Instead, he continued to fight. Huang Yu was surprised. This made him feel strange. Boom! A powerful aura suddenly exploded from Xiao Xiong, and he suddenly turned his spear around, stabbing it at Huang Yu. This was obviously completely out of Huang Yu's expectations. He hesitated for a moment before finally reacting. However, could there be such hesitation in a battle between celestial kings? The spear pierced through the cloak, and then stabbed out from the other side. No one controlling it. Xiao Xiong. Xiao Xiong roared in fury, the black light in his eyes receding. Ling Han was also shocked. He had not thought that Xiao Xiong would actually wake up at the last moment and give Huang Yu a fatal blow. It had to be said that Xiao Xiong lived up to his status as a super emperor star, and he did not live up to his status as a big shot of the #1 martial arts institution in the world. Damn it! Huang Yu roared in fury. He waved his hand, striking Xiao Xiong's chest. Xiao Xiong's body immediately exploded. Right now, aside from his head, everything else was formed from black qi, and the black qi was completely controlled by Huang Yu. Naturally, it was destroyed upon being struck. Xiao Xiong revealed a puzzled expression. After being struck by the celestial spear, not only did he not die, his battle prowess was not even affected in the slightest. He still managed to react. With a flick of his spear, the tip of the spear slashed across the cloak, instantly causing Huang Yu's cloak to fall off. Xiao Xiong immediately revealed an expression as if he had seen a ghost. Even Ling Han had the same expression, because the cloak had been removed, revealing Huang Yu's face. It was too terrifying. Was this really a human? Although he had a nose and eyes, there were black tentacles everywhere. They were not corporeal but rather formed from black qi. Xiao Xiong was sent flying, and the black qi around his body immediately dissipated, leaving behind only a bald head. Damn it, you actually dared to reveal my true appearance. Huang Yu's expression was filled with rage. The black tentacles on his face danced about, making him look incomparably sinister and disgusting. Xiao Xiong's head floated in midair. At his level, as long as his consciousness was not destroyed, he would not die. He could still use some divine abilities. He stared at Huang Yu in shock, and then blurted out, "You're Chang Huayun." Huang Yu looked at Xiao Xiong and said darkly, "I didn't expect that a junior like you would actually recognize me. Didn't you die in the foreign battlefield a long time ago?" Xiao Xiong still found it difficult to conceal his shock. Anyone who saw a person who was rumored to be dead, and who had turned into such a strange appearance, would not be able to stop their hearts from surging like the sea, right? Correct. The previous Chang Huayan died in the foreign battlefield a long time ago. Now I am Huang Yu, said Huang Yu. His face was filled with killing intent, and that was his indifference towards the people of the world. I heard that you were framed by a senior from the same sect, and that's why you fell into the trap, Xiao Xiong muttered, his voice growing softer and softer. Ling Han continued, you didn't die. Instead, you sided with madness. He finally understood why the black gas gave him a feeling of déjà vu. It was because it was too similar to madness's tentacles. Chang Huayan had fallen into madness's trap, but madness had not killed him. Instead, it had transformed him, and used his anger at being betrayed to successfully make him submit to it. Now, Chang Huayan had entered the cemetery of the immortal king with a mission. Ling Han glanced at the giant eggs around him. There were numerous ninth heaven celestial kings here, and they were all affected and controlled by the black aura. Once they were allowed to leave the cemetery of the celestial king, how terrifying a massacre would it be? The strength of a plane was largely determined by the number of life circles in the entire plane, and not by the strength of a limited number of peak experts. After these immortal kings caused a massacre, it would definitely greatly weaken the strength of the fiery frost plane. Then, madness would naturally be one step closer to devouring this plane. Xiao Xiong also thought of this, and his face instantly turned incomparably pale, even though he only had a head left. It was more refreshing to read on his phone. Chapter 2658. Huang Yu's gaze swept over Ling Han and Xiao Xiong. Black gas rose from his face, turning into spirit snakes and tentacles. It was extremely disgusting. He smiled. I really can't underestimate your intelligence. You've almost restored the truth with just a little clue. Not bad. I was betrayed and surrounded. In the end, I was drowned by Lord Madness's army. Everyone thought I was dead. But I didn't die. It was Lord Madness who gave me a new life and a wider world. Do you think it's a shame and a mistake to submit to Lord Madness? Lord Madness is destined to merge all planes and contain the world. If we live in Lord Madness's world, we can truly surpass heaven and earth and transcend heaven and earth. Ling Han snorted. You're clearly a lackey, but you still act so righteous. I really don't know how you can be so thick-skinned. Young man, you're so arrogant now, but you don't know that the darkest thing is the human heart. Huang Yu snorted, his eyes dancing with anger. When these people are done, I'll take them to find the person who framed me and settle the debt of the past. What do you want to do with these immortal kings? Ling Han asked in a low voice. Huang Yu didn't need to answer, but after thinking about it, Ling Han was completely a bird in a cage. There was no need to care. Moreover, he had done such a big thing. If he didn't share it with others, he would indeed feel unhappy. In any case, he had already guessed so much. There was no harm in letting him know a few more things. He smiled and said, this so-called black gas is Lord Madness's spiritual fragment. To Lord Madness, this is insignificant. But to us immortal kings, it can help us transform and take an incomparably crucial step. He revealed a fanatical expression. Think about it. Tens of thousands of quasi-celestial venerables. How spectacular would that be? The plane's power was limitless, and a plane scroll could easily create a celestial venerable. But why were there so few celestial venerables? Because the world had its own rules. Celestial venerable level power was absolutely not allowed to appear. But madness was different. It was both a plane and a living being. It had its own thoughts and didn't need to care about any rules at all. Thus, it could create as many celestial venerables as it wanted. In fact, it had even extended its hand here. In its world, creating an Empyrean was a matter of a single thought. But in other planes, it wasn't so simple. It had to be done through the hands of others, and it would take a lot of time. Even a quasi-Empyrean wouldn't be able to blast open the immortal king's cemetery. Ling Han spoke indifferently, but these words were a foreshadowing. Sure enough, Huang Yu continued, this Yuan ancient tomb is a great tomb set up by the Yuan ancient heavenly sovereign when he was still alive. All of his subordinates are buried here. Later on, he went to the foreign battlefield to fight against madman, so he was naturally blasted into dregs. However, he paused for a moment before continuing, Lord Hysteria obtained all of Emperor Yuangu's memories and spent a lot of effort to forcibly open a passage here that leads to the outside world. So, keep your worries to yourself. Kid, don't have any unrealistic fantasies. If you take the initiative to absorb the black gas into your body, you'll suffer less. Otherwise, I'll be more than happy to torture a genius. Ling Han had asked this question because he wanted to know if there was a way out. As expected, since Huang Yu had set up such a huge plot, he had already arranged all the details. As long as these 9th-level immortal kings broke through to the quasi-Empyrean realm, Huang Yu would bring them out. Whether they moved separately or as a group, this force would be incomparably terrifying. Most importantly, the foreign battlefield was in a critical state. How many Empyreans could be brought back to deal with this huge problem? A first-step Empyrean was simply not enough. If they couldn't even deal with so many 9th-level immortal kings, then when these people became quasi-Empyreans, even second-step Empyreans might not be enough. Sai, your eyes are flickering. Clearly, you're unwilling to accept my suggestion. Huang Yu shook his head, then said, Xiaoying Xiong, why haven't you taken down this rebel for me? Xiaoying Xiong revealed a struggling expression, but his eyes were quickly covered by the black light again. Boom! Countless strands of black gas fell from his severed neck and formed his torso. Kill! He pushed his immortal spear and attacked Ling Han. Huang Yu sighed. If Ling Han and Xiaoying Xiong had come a little earlier, he could have awakened some 9th-level immortal kings to help. However, now was the most crucial time for these immortal kings to break through to the quasi-Empyrean realm. If they were interrupted, they would no longer be able to contact the distant frenzy. Naturally, they would no longer be able to break through to the quasi-Empyrean realm. However, even if Xiaoying Xiong couldn't take care of Ling Han, wouldn't Huang Yu be enough? Ding 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 ding. Ling Han and Xiaoying Xiong continued to fight. The two of them fought from east to west, from south to north. The shockwaves shook the palace, shattering the outer layer of the giant egg. However, the egg inside was completely undamaged. It didn't affect the immortal kings within at all. Huang Yu frowned. He had a bad feeling about this. At this moment, Xiaoying Xiong roared angrily. Boom! A beam of golden light rose from his head, instantly dispersing the black gas that formed his body. No! Huang Yu cried out. This meant that Xiaoying Xiong had escaped his control again. How was this possible? Once the black gas entered one's body, one would be affected by it. It was a chaotic spiritual fragment. Even if it was just a tiny bit, and under the suppression of this plane, it was still a piece of cake for it to affect a 9th heaven immortal king. Even a 9th heaven immortal king couldn't deal with it, let alone a mere 8th heaven immortal king. However, not only had Xiaoying Xiong dealt with it, he had done it twice. Was this the will of a super emperor star? Let's go. I'll stop him. We have to bring this news back to the martial arts institution. Otherwise, even if I become a ghost, I won't forgive you. Xiaoying Xiong roared. He suddenly grabbed at his forehead, and a ball of white light appeared in his hand. He tossed it towards Ling Han. Ling Han stretched out his hand and grabbed it. This ball of light was the complete 9 transformations heaven scripture. He couldn't help but sigh. Although Xiaoying Xiong had always been against him, racking his brains to think of a way to kill him, at the last moment, he had done something truly heroic. While they were fighting, Xiaoying Xiong had sent him a voice transmission, saying that he still had a sliver of consciousness. He had purposely fought with Ling Han to a remote part of the palace, creating an opportunity for Ling Han to escape. If Huang Yu's plan succeeded, tens of thousands of quasi-heavenly venerables would enter the Firefrost plane, and the destruction they would cause would be too terrifying. In the face of such a major issue, Xiaoying Xiong had suppressed his personal grudges. For once, he had been righteous, magnanimous, and heroic. He knew that he had no chance of survival, so he grabbed the 9 transformations heaven scripture and tossed it to Ling Han. He wasn't Huang Yu, and he couldn't let Ling Han completely grasp this scripture. He could only give the memories to Ling Han so that he could slowly comprehend it. Ling Han's expression was solemn. Xiaoying Xiong, from now on, we're even. Allow me to call you Brother Xiao. Ah, don't be so mushy. I'm telling you to scram because no one can humiliate me. Xiong turned his head, and the golden energy transformed back into his body. He held the immortal spear in his hand, and he gave off a heroic aura. Although there were millions of people reading on their phones, it was more refreshing. Chapter 2659. Take them down. Huang Yu was flustered and exasperated. How could he care about anything else? He pointed at Ling Han and Xiong. Crack, crack, crack. The 10 unbreakable eggs shattered on their own, and the 10th firmament immortal kings stood up. Each of them exuded a terrifying aura. They had been advancing towards quasi-heavenly venerables. Although their progress had been interrupted and they might never become quasi-heavenly venerables again, 10 peak 9th firmament immortal kings working together could probably put up a fight against quasi-heavenly venerables. However, the eyes of these 10 9th firmament immortal kings were pitch black. It was impossible to tell the whites of their eyes apart. It was extremely strange. Walking corpses. Ling Han immediately thought to himself. They had obtained the power of frenzy, but they could not avoid becoming walking corpses. They had no thoughts of their own and could only obey orders. This was also why Huang Yu was needed. Not only did he have to act as a middleman, but he was also responsible for commanding these quasi-heavenly venerables in battle. Moreover, why was Huang Yu only an immortal king and not a quasi-heavenly venerable? It was probably for the same reason. Xiong laughed loudly. Boom. He released boundless golden energy. Hurry up and leave. With me, Xiong, blocking this place, no one can even think about taking a step forward. Ling Han took a deep breath and said, I hope we can meet again. Don't make it sound like we're friends, Xiong said coldly. I only let you break out because you're in a better state than me. In fact, I'd be more than happy to cut off your head. Ling Han nodded. I'll avenge you. He did not waste any more time. With so many 9th firmament immortal kings surrounding him, he had no time to waste. His figure leaped, and he immediately ran toward the depths of this palace. Take them down. Take them down. Huang Yu was flustered. If he awakened all the immortal kings, he would definitely be able to stop Ling Han. However, once the process of breaking through to the quasi-heavenly venerable level was interrupted, there would be no second chance. He had been planning for tens of thousands of years, but only a few 9th firmament immortal kings had been released. Wasn't this a joke? Any second step heavenly venerable would be able to deal with them. Huang Yu could only awaken a limited number of celestial kings. Otherwise, he would not be able to bear the consequences. After all, he was just a crazy dog. How can I, Xiong, slaughter in all directions? The current Xiong was even more heroic. He shook his immortal spear. Hong, golden light surged from the immortal spear, burning like flames. The 10 9th heaven immortal kings rushed over, but they were all blocked by Xiong. Amidst the surging golden energy, Xiong was incomparably valiant. Ling Han sighed. This was Xiong's most resplendent battle. Even if he won, he would still die due to overexertion. In fact, he might even die suddenly during the battle. Xiong had stood firm in the face of the major issues of right and wrong. He had lived up to his status as a tycoon of the #1 martial institution in the world. Ling Han suppressed the thoughts in his heart, and his body technique exploded forth. His speed increased once again. He definitely could not waste the time that Xiong had risked his life to buy for him. Peng. The golden light and black aura clashed behind him, and Huang Yu roared furiously. He chased after Ling Han by himself. There was nothing he could do about it. These 9th heaven immortal kings had been interrupted during their evolution, and they were like newborn babies. Although they listened to orders, they did not have a good understanding of the orders. If he asked them to kill Ling Han and Xiong, they would attack Xiong as soon as they saw Xiong approaching, completely ignoring Ling Han. As such, Huang Yu chased after him by himself. He had long since reached the peak of the 9th heaven, and he was also a super emperor star. His battle prowess was incredibly terrifying, but in terms of speed, he might not be faster than Ling Han. Moreover, he had started off later, so there was still a large gap between him and Ling Han. Ling Han did not dare to be careless. If Huang Yu caught up to him, then he would release 10 or so ninth heaven immortal kings. Even if Ling Han used the 5 elemental lightning technique, he might not be able to break through. He had to hurry back to the Martial Arts Institute and report what had happened here. Otherwise, how could he justify Xiao Yingxiong's sacrifice? This was the highest level of the palace. There was no 34th level. When Ling Han arrived at the end of the palace, he saw a black door of light in front of him. There was black aura swirling around it. Was this the way out? Ling Han paused slightly, and a look of hesitation appeared on his face. Boom! A terrifying aura surged over. Huang Yu had already caught up. Ling Han gritted his teeth. Whether it was the way out or not, he had to move. Shio! He leaped into the door of light, and his figure instantly disappeared. When Huang Yu caught up, he stopped as well, and a look of hesitation appeared on his face. Although Lord Hysteria has opened the passageway, he has not adjusted the location of the exit. Even if this brat can escape, where he will appear is a problem. Perhaps by the time he returns to the Martial Arts Institute, I will have already completed my mission here. Should I chase or not? The evolution has already begun. I actually don't have to stay here. Just in case, let's chase. He took a step forward, and also entered the black door of light. Shio! His figure also immediately disappeared. Hong, a massive pulling force assaulted him, causing intense pain all over Ling Han's body. This was indeed a spatial passageway that could leave the graveyard of the Celestial King, but that was designed for pseudo-celestial venerables. Now that Ling Han had to cross it, he naturally suffered greatly. Merciless energy sliced over. Even if he circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, it was useless. He would be injured at every turn, and if he didn't circulate it, his injuries would be even more severe. Even Ling Han couldn't bear it. His figure flashed, and he entered the Celestial Indulgence Inn. The energy swept past, and the surface of the Celestial Indulgence Inn immediately ignited with blazing flames. The seals lit up, and then were quickly extinguished. Thankfully, this was divine metal, after all, and could withstand the energy flow. After an unknown period of time, the Celestial Indulgence Inn was shot out, streaking across the sky, and then landing in a pile of green grass. Ling Han's figure appeared, and his gaze swept over. This was a plain, and the grass was like a carpet. He had left. Ling Han immediately thought. This was definitely not the graveyard of the Celestial King. The feeling was completely different. He leaped up, and immediately fled far away. Who knew when Huang Yu would run out? First, where was he, and how far away was he from the academy? His present speed was astonishingly fast, and his stamina was endless, which was more suitable for long-distance running. His explosive power was powerful, and it was practically perfect. No wonder celestial venerables are so powerful, because they use their own power, unlike celestial kings, who need to go through the process of mobilizing regulations, Ling Han said as he ran. At this time, he didn't dare to absorb Suzy anymore. If his body exploded, who knew how many years he would have to recuperate? I'll go into seclusion after I return, and only come out after I improve my body technique to the peak of the 7th heaven. The mountains and rivers continued to grow further and further away under Ling Han's feet. After running for half a day, he finally discovered a large city, and directly descended with a great aura. The strongest elite in this city was only a 5th heaven celestial king. When they saw Ling Han's 7-colored lights swirling around him, they hurriedly stepped forward and addressed him as senior, extremely respectful. What city is this, and how far is it from the #1 martial arts academy in the world? Ling Han asked. He directly revealed his identity as a 7th heaven celestial king because he wanted to save time. Chapter 2661. Ling Han ran, and Huang Yu chased. The two of them used their own techniques. Huang Yu continuously sent out mental attacks and used the black aura to form various weapons that shot towards Ling Han. Ling Han was not afraid. He used the indestructible heaven scroll to take the attacks head-on and counterattacked with the 5-element lightning technique. Suddenly using the 5-element lightning technique, Huang Yu almost suffered a great loss. However, he was a peak stage 9th heaven super emperor star, after all, and his battle prowess was much higher than Ling Han's. Moreover, he had grasped a heavenly venerate treasure technique like the 9 transformations heaven scroll. At the price of suffering a small loss, he was still able to resolve the attack. After this attack, Huang Yu naturally became much more cautious. He no longer treated Ling Han as a 7th heaven celestial king, but as an existence at the same cultivation level as him. However, because he was so cautious, although Ling Han could no longer hurt him, it also made him less of a threat to Ling Han. Xiu xiu xiu. The 2 celestial kings continuously traveled through space, their speed ridiculously fast. Along the way, many people noticed them, but no one dared to interfere and ask them what was going on. Since Huang Yu was sent by madness to take charge of the situation, he was naturally not just a peak stage 9th heaven super emperor star. Seeing that he could not catch up to Ling Han for a long time, a fierce look flashed in his eyes, and he drew out 3 thin needles. These were bestowed to him by madness. Of course, they were not treasures that madness had refined herself, but obtained from the hands of heavenly venerates that had died in battle during the long war. These were heavenly venerate treasures. Of course, the 3 thin needles were already severely damaged, and they were far from the power of a heavenly venerate. However, they still surpassed the level of 9th heaven, and were infinitely close to the power of a quasi-heavenly venerate. More importantly, in his hands, he could fully unleash the power of these 3 thin needles. Go! He lightly shouted, and under his full power, the 3 thin needles were completely revived. However, there were no runes moving, only endless power surging. Heavenly venerates did not cultivate regulations. Xiu, 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 3 thin needles shot out in unison, chasing after Ling Han at an indescribably fast speed. Ling Han could not help but feel a strong sense of vigilance. With a sweep of his divine will, he had already discovered 3 thin needles. However, by the time he discovered them, they were already less than 300 meters away from him, and they were still rapidly closing in. 90 zhang, 80 zhang, 70 zhang. His speed was far above Ling Han's. He activated the spatial laws and teleported himself to another location, but the needle automatically changed directions as though it had its own consciousness. If an Empyrean treasure could be dodged so easily, wouldn't it be too degrading? Ling Han unleashed the time rules again, wanting to delay the approach of the 3 thin needles, but it was also ineffective. It was as if nothing could touch it. An Empyrean life treasure. Ling Han thought to himself. Only an Empyrean life treasure could possess such power. He had to take it head-on. Ling Han quickly spun around, and his divine demon sword slashed toward the 3 thin needles. 2 crisp sounds rang out, and the divine demon sword slashed down on 2 of the thin needles. It sliced them in half with unstoppable force. However, the 3rd thin needle broke through the defenses of the divine demon sword and directly attacked Ling Han's body. Ling Han had already channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, but this time, the indestructible heaven scroll had no effect. The thin needle broke through his skin and entered his blood vessels. Huang Yu couldn't help but sigh. With the passage of time, even treasures forged by heavenly venerates had become useless. Otherwise, although the thin needle was not forged from divine metal, nor was it forged from devouring metal, it should not have been broken so easily. However, there was still 1 thin needle that entered Ling Han's body. This was enough. With the power of pseudo-heavenly venerate, even a 9th heaven peak stage celestial king could only die. Ling Han sheathed his sword, turned around, and continued to run. He knew that this was not appropriate, but he could only think of a solution as he ran. He felt as if the blood in his body was burning, and it was extremely uncomfortable. This was definitely not an illusion. He could clearly feel that his skin was emitting heat, and his body was rapidly losing water. This was a powerful killing tool, and it wanted to burn him into a dried corpse. Ling Han humphed, and his left hand grabbed out, drawing a large amount of water elements from heaven and earth into his body to alleviate the danger in his body. He channeled the indestructible heaven scroll again, trying to force the thin needle out. However, the thin needle moved along his blood, still astonishingly fast, and could not be seen at all. Don't waste your effort. That is a weapon that the 1,000 transformations Heavenly Venerate had personally forged in the past. Although it was forged casually by him, and he did not use any precious materials, it is still not something that a mere 7th heaven celestial king like you can resist, Huang Yu said from behind. Ling Han naturally ignored him. He had experienced countless dangers in his life, so how could he give up just because of a few words from his opponent? However, there was one thing that Huang Yu had said correctly. He indeed could not force the thin needle out of his body. Then, a ruthless expression suddenly appeared on Ling Han's face, and he suddenly slashed down at his finger. Blood sprayed out, and one of his fingers was immediately severed. However, the life-threatening boiling in his body also disappeared. That was because the thin needle had just moved to his finger, and he had severed it along with his finger. It was not that he did not care about his hand, but rather that he treasured his life even more. Ling Han did not even frown. Just now, his body had been continuously exploding, so what did severing a finger matter now? Even Huang Yu was stunned. He had not thought that Ling Han would not only be so ruthless towards himself, but also have such astonishing insight. He had used the smallest price to eliminate a great danger. His eyes overflowed with killing intent. He wanted to let Ling Han escape. This man would definitely become a supreme elite in the future, and become one of the main forces that could resist the madness. He could not stay. He did his best to chase after him, wanting to eliminate this hidden danger. Ling Han was neither angry nor shocked. His goal was extremely clear. Even if there was a chance to kill Huang Yu now, he would not do it, because the most important thing was to prevent those 9th heaven celestial kings from becoming quasi-celestial venerables in the Yuan ancient tomb. Chase, escape, chase, escape. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Time flew, and after almost 50 years, the mountain where the world's #1 martial arts academy was located was already in sight. As a former martial arts academy disciple, how could Huang Yu not know that this was the world's #1 martial arts academy? He roared angrily, but he had no choice but to stop his pursuit and turn around to leave. If he attracted the attention of the academy's celestial venerables, then he would definitely be killed instantly. Even if he was the son of a 7th-step celestial venerable, he would still be killed immediately. Damn it, he snorted. I can only activate the backup plan. I cannot let a small pawn ruin Lord Madness's plan. Ling Han walked for a while longer, and he had already entered the world's #1 martial arts academy's sphere of influence. There were no guards here. The 9 Extremes formation could keep out all unqualified people, so there was no need for guards. He quickly passed through the formation, and then he roared towards the sky, letting out a thunderous roar. What the hell are you shouting for? Immediately, many celestial kings rushed out and roared at Ling Han. These were all geniuses from countless planes, and each of them had the potential to be invincible. Ling Han ignored them and shouted, "Is Senior Black Donkey here?" A black shadow flashed, and a black donkey suddenly appeared. The donkey's face was filled with shock. "Brat, how did you get out? Who let you out?" Ling Han said seriously, "Senior, something big has happened." Chapter 2662. What's the matter? The black donkey asked indifferently. Yo, little Han, why are you back? The large black dog ran out as well. When he saw Ling Han, his eyes couldn't help but pop out. This was too inconceivable. A person that entered the cemetery of a celestial king could still run out on his own. Let's find a secluded place to talk, Ling Han said. The black donkey stood up on its hind legs, waving its hoof. The man, dog, and donkey suddenly disappeared. Those prodigies that ran out were all curious. What was wrong with this person? Who is this person? I don't know. He's called Ling Han. A young man suddenly spoke up, a smile on his face. Yan Xianlu previously, after Ling Han had battled against Tian Sheng, there had been no more news of him. Most people said that he had already died. Though Yan Xianlu did not believe that Ling Han was someone who would die so easily, he had not appeared for so many years, causing him to feel uncertain. But just now, he finally found Ling Han. And who is Ling Han? Someone asked. That's a long story, Yen Xianlu said with a smile. Ling Han, the black donkey, and the large black dog appeared at the summit. The black donkey said impatiently, "Brat, has the sky collapsed or the earth collapsed?" Ling Han recounted what had happened in the Yuan ancient tomb, and the black donkey instantly looked shocked. "Oh, good boy, this is really a big matter." The black donkey was greatly shocked. "This matter, even I can't handle it. I'll immediately find Zhou Heng and have that guy come out. Otherwise, if one or two escape, it'll cause a huge problem." Furthermore, when the cemetery of a celestial king was established, it was in consideration of the various heavenly venerables. Now that we want to kill all the celestial kings inside, we'll definitely encounter the opposition of many heavenly venerables, and it'll be very difficult to handle. Fuck, why did that bitch Frenzy use such a sneaky move? The black donkey hopped, appearing very irritated. It was naturally not difficult to kill a group of ninth heaven celestial kings, but the difficult part was that many ninth heaven celestial kings had powerful backgrounds, and now was the time to fight Frenzy. If they became disunited, it would shake the entire situation. Forget it. Let me deliver the news first. The black donkey tore through space and left. Ling Han and the large black dog stared at each other. Although they hadn't seen each other for almost 100 million years, they hadn't changed in the slightest. "Damn dog, how's the immortal gold going?" Ling Han asked. They still had another mission, and that was to suppress innate born and have the soul of the heavenly venerable born origin venerable replace him. However, innate born's physique was comparable to divine metal. If they wanted to severely wound him, they would first have to upgrade their divine demon sword to the level of a heavenly venerable treasure tool. Only then would they be able to threaten innate born. "Tish, do you think divine metal is like cabbages?" the large black dog said in displeasure. However, he still took out 7 pieces of divine metal. Ling Han was surprised. Where did you go to swindle people? In less than 100 million years, he had obtained 7 pieces of immortal metal. Even in the fiery frost plane, it was not easy. "Shoo shoo shoo. Do you even know how to talk?" The large black dog waved his paw and said, "Hurry up. Can you upgrade the divine demon sword?" Ling Han nodded, drew out the divine demon sword, and began to devour the divine metal. Divine metal was tough, and even ninth heaven celestial kings could reforge and cut it, but they couldn't destroy it in the end. However, facing the devouring metal, divine metal was incredibly fragile. Very soon, all of its essence was extracted, and it turned into dust. Ling Han waved the divine demon sword, and carefully felt it for a moment before saying, "It's still a little short. I estimate that I still need another 30 to 50 pieces of divine metal." The large black dog bared his teeth. "Why do you still need so much? Are you going to let this dog live?" Ling Han only smiled, and stared at the large black dog. "All right, Grandpa Dog will continue, all right?" The large black dog turned around and left. Compared to Ling Han, he was even more hopeful that the heavenly venerable of Fate-born could be revived. After all, Ling Han had never truly come into contact with the heavenly venerable of Fate-born. However, the large black dog had always been cultivating with the heavenly venerable of Fate-born, and their relationship was incredibly deep. Ling Han returned to his residence. After so many years, he had also accumulated innumerable cultivation resources. The Empress and Bewitching Maiden Ro also left the Immortal Indulgence residence and brought all their cultivation resources over, handing them over to Ling Han to manage. Ling Han planned to concoct alchemical pills. If he only relied on the supply from the Academy, the cultivation resources he could obtain were still limited. After all, he wanted to improve his indestructible celestial king physique, and the resources needed for this were too much. If he relied on the supply from the Academy, it would probably take him an epoch to be able to compete. He recuperated from his injuries, cultivated, and concocted alchemical pills at the same time. As for the matter of the Yuan ancient tomb, there was no need for him to worry about it anymore. If even Zhou Heng could not handle this matter, then what use could he, a seventh heaven celestial king, be? Several years later, his severed finger was regrown, and there was not the slightest sequela left. Another few years later, news spread that the cemetery of the Celestial King had been flattened, and only a few people had come out alive. This was very astonishing and attracted the attention of countless people. It also made many great forces very angry. Because of the ascending dragon pill, in fact, there were actually many celestial kings that had been specially sent into the cemetery of the Celestial King, such as Green Ghost Celestial King. But now that these people had all died here, it was naturally impossible for there to be any more ascending dragon pills. This made the great forces furious, and they were also investigating the truth of the matter. After Ling Han found out, he thought that some forces would definitely blame it on him, because it was his report that led to the destruction of the cemetery of the Celestial King. Of course, this had nothing to do with Ling Han. If he had not brought back the news, it was unknown how much damage would have been caused by the appearance of so many quasi-celestial venerables. This was a great credit. But how could those forces think so? They only knew that their interest had been damaged, and the direct cause was Ling Han. If you want to blame someone, then blame it on them. If my cultivation is great, then who should I be afraid of? Whoever dares to come looking for trouble, I'll just kill them. Everyone who did such a crazy thing deserves to be killed. Ling Han quickly put this matter aside and focused on cultivation and alchemy. He could only absorb one hollow seed every 1,000 years, and then use it to temper his body and obtain an improvement in his body arts. Meanwhile, his body would first have to experience an all-round torment. This kind of improvement in strength was too difficult, but it was also incredibly sturdy. Under such repeated tempering of his body, the seventh layer of the indestructible Celestial King body was actually completely cultivated. Ling Han continued to work hard, and his strength steadily increased. On the other hand, he had also concocted a great many alchemical pills, and planned to find a chance to exchange them for some natural treasures. 30,000 years later, he came out of seclusion. He had just come out when the Rain Emperor, Yan Xianlu, and the others all came over and began to reminisce with him. Come to think of it, they had not seen each other for almost 100 million years. The Rain Emperor's cultivation speed was still very fast, and had reached the height of 5th heaven. Yan Xianlu and Yi were slightly slower, only at 3rd heaven. This could not compare to Ling Han, but no matter which plane they were placed in, this was still astonishingly fast. Ling Han, my master has a message for you. Why don't you quickly come out and kneel to listen? A voice suddenly traveled over. Who is so arrogant? Yan Xianlu immediately stood up. Yet Yi's eyes flashed, and he said, that seems to be nature's lackey, Zhu Hongxian. Nature's Ling Han's and the Rain Emperor's eyes both lit up, revealing a blazing fighting spirit. I'll send him away. He also stood up and walked towards the door. Nature had only sent out a subordinate, so they could not let Ling Han face him either. Otherwise, wouldn't that be lowering their status? Chapter 2663. Ling Han did not move, but after a short while, he heard a loud commotion from outside. Clearly, he had already started fighting with Zhu Hongxian. This battle did not continue for long. Very soon, everything calmed down, and then Yi strode in. What does Tianxing want to do? Yan Xianlu could not help but ask first. He took a deep breath and said, he issued a challenge to Ling Han to battle in the Thousand Winds Forest 3 days later. Tianxing's challenge. Ling Han thought for a moment and asked, what cultivation level is Tianxing at now? His improvement is astonishing. He's already at the 7th heaven, the Rain Emperor said. In less than 100 million years, he had directly broken through to the 2nd heaven. This speed was astonishingly fast. It should be known that the higher one's cultivation level was, the slower it was to improve. Ling Han broke into a smile. 7th heaven? All right, agree to him. 3 days later, the battle in the Thousand Winds Forest. The Rain Emperor and Yan Xianlu's expressions changed at the same time, and they all began to persuade him. Ling Han, don't be rash. Tianxing's battle prowess far surpasses his cultivation level, and his freakish talent is not inferior to yours. He once challenged an elite of the 9th heaven, and won. Furthermore, This person's physique is as strong as divine metal. This is the most frightening aspect. Even the strongest celestial king could only suppress him and would not be able to kill him. He stands in an invincible position from Tianxing and is too difficult to deal with. Ling Han only smiled and then released his cultivation level. Suddenly, 7 rays of light entwined around his body. Hong, an astonishing aura circulated, and the Rain Emperor and the others paled in shock. Fourth brother, you've actually also broken through to the 7th heaven. After a moment of shock, the Rain Emperor's face was filled with joy. Ling Han nodded. Though he had already caught up to Tianxing in terms of cultivation level, there was not much joy on his face. That was because in his plan, he had to break through to the 9th heaven in 100 million years' time. Now, there was a whole 2 cultivation levels difference, which was a little far from what he had expected. In a battle of equals, Fourth brother's battle prowess is definitely not inferior to Tianxing's. The Rain Emperor said with a nod. But what is innately most powerful is not his battle prowess, but rather his physique. It is like divine metal, indestructible and indestructible. Yan Xianlu was still worried. Ling Han smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. I came back this time to test this fellow's strength. Even if he didn't challenge me, I would still fight him. Then I'll reply to him." He went out again. In next to no time, a shocking piece of news spread out. Tian had challenged Ling Han to a battle, and it would take place 3 days from now in the Thousand Wind Forest. Instantly, the entire martial academy was in an uproar. Who was Ling Han? Probably 9 out of 10 people didn't know who he was. However, almost everyone knew about him. Along the way, he had challenged countless strong students. Most of them ended in complete victories. Occasionally he wouldn't win, but he would end up in a draw. It was because no one could do anything to his physique, incomparably powerful like immortal gold. Only a 9th firmament immortal king could refine immortal metal, but if he still couldn't destroy it, how could he truly injure the innate? This is a monster. Now, this monster actually wanted to challenge an unknown person. How could people accept this? Could it be that Ling Han is actually a peak 9th firmament heavenly emperor despite being so low-key? That's right. If not, why would Tian challenge him? He only challenges people with higher cultivation levels than him. Even people as strong as Xiao Xiong and Miao Hua aren't his match. Wrong, all of you are wrong. This Ling Han is only at the 7th firmament. What? Tian can actually challenge immortal kings at the same level? I heard that this Ling Han and Tian came from the same plane. They were old rivals in the past. Although Tian had the upper hand, he couldn't kill Ling Han. Therefore, this will be their final battle for who knows how many times. I also heard that they had a grudge against each other because of a woman. I heard that Tian pursued Ling Han, but Ling Han didn't like women. In the end, Tian's love turned into hatred, and they had a falling out. You guys are all wrong. Do you remember Zhang San and Li Si who left their names on the immemorial stone? Of course, they are absolutely ferocious people. Ling Han is Zhang San and Li Si. Then the battle between the two of them is going to start soon. Ling Han is definitely not weak. So what? Don't forget that Tian's physique is comparable to immortal metal. He doesn't need to fear any immortal king. That's true. Tian's chances of winning should be higher. The students were in a heated discussion and immediately became extremely gossipy. Many major powers also acted upon hearing the news. Those who could be challenged by Tian were definitely extraordinary people. They wanted to get to know Ling Han. The entire academy was looking forward to the battle between dragons and tigers in 3 days. How exciting would it be? However, Ling Han didn't feel any nervousness from the battle. He was just living peacefully with the girls, as if the one going to battle 3 days later wasn't him. "Husband, are you confident?" Lu Yutong and the other girls asked. Ling Han smiled slightly. This person of Tian's has already reached the peak of Celestial King tier in terms of defense. Only the power of a Celestial Venerable can truly destroy immortal metal. Then what do we do? Everyone was anxious, especially bewitching Maiden Ro. She had seen Tian Tian's might before. Back then, even if Ling Han, the Rain Emperor, Ji Wuming, and Fire Hibiscus teamed up, they still weren't a match for him. Don't worry, your husband isn't someone to be trifled with. Ling Han smiled. In these tens of thousands of years, he had also grasped the 9 transformations heaven scroll. With 3 celestial venerable treasured techniques in his hands, was he still not qualified to challenge Tian Tian? Seeing that Ling Han was so confident, the girls could only believe in this husband of theirs. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Because both sides of the battle were very famous, and with the help of some people with ulterior motives, when the battle arrived, not only did all the students of this year come to watch, but even the previous years also had extremely outstanding figures. Ah Mu, Waning Moon, and Du Shi were all people who had left their names on the immemorial stone, and had long reached the peak of 9th heaven. However, the step of Celestial Venerable was too difficult, and they were still struggling bitterly at this level. Even the 3 of them had arrived, which showed how much attention this battle had garnered. The 3 big shots of the students stood in the sky with their hands behind their backs, far out of reach. 9 rays of light intertwined, yet it also seemed as if they were about to fuse into one. They were about to step into the quasi-celestial venerable tier. Once they took this step, they would leave the realm of Celestial King. Tian Tian had arrived long ago. He was like the moon surrounded by stars. There was a large group of people beside him, and he stood with his hands behind his back. 7 rays of light intertwined around him, showing off his abilities. Time continued to pass, but there was still no sign of Ling Han. Everyone began to panic. Where's Ling Han? He can't be afraid to fight, right? If he agreed to fight, but then ran away at the last minute, would he still have the face to stay in the academy in the future? He's really going to go down in history. Among the spectators, Zhuo Kai was the most depressed. He had been ruthlessly taught a lesson by Ling Han, and he wanted to take revenge. However, his energy in the academy was limited, and the old ancestor was fighting in the extraterrestrial battlefield. It was impossible for him to come back, and he could only hold his breath. Later, Ling Han quietly went to the Immortal King's cemetery, and he had no chance of taking revenge. He had waited for this opportunity with great difficulty, and he was extremely eager to go to Tian Tian to beat up Ling Han. Why didn't Ling Han come? At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the distance. It was Ling Han, reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 2665. Playing dumb in front of me won't do you any good, Tianxing said menacingly. Oh, so what? Ling Han said calmly. You'll find out soon. Tianxing charged over again, still using his spear as a staff. Peng Ling Han drew his sword to parry the golden spear. The divine demon sword blocked the golden spear, but strangely enough, the golden spear suddenly became like a whip. It was soft and pliable, and the spear coiled around Ling Han's body before shooting toward his face. This wasn't a celestial tool at all, but a natural arm that could transform at will. Interesting, Ling Han said, and punched with his left hand. Peng, a terrifying shock wave, and Tianxing was immediately pushed back. As soon as they clashed, both of them used their mystical abilities, and it was difficult to determine who was superior. Shatter let out a roar as his arms began to spin at high speed. The natural laws in the area were already in a state of chaos, and now that he was twisting them like this, they were completely destroyed. There was no way for him to extract any more of them. Tianxing laughed loudly, and his arms turned into swords again, stabbing at Ling Han. Without regulations, celestial kings were trash. His tactic was simple and violent, but extremely effective. The prodigies below watched, frowning. This was equivalent to forcibly stripping celestial king power. How many people could block a physical battle? This tactic was incredibly simple, but there was no way to break it. Unless his tier is above Tianxing, and he can forcibly extract regulations from further away. Or he can lock regulations in his body, but that way he can only quickly suppress Tianxing. Otherwise, as time goes on, the regulations will be exhausted, and he'll be in trouble. The problem is his physique is comparable to divine metal. Who can suppress him in a short time? There's no solution. If Tianxing reaches level 9, then he'll be invincible among celestial kings. Everyone shook their heads. To break Tianxing's physique, he had to surpass level 9. Only half-step heavenly venerables could do this. How could Ling Han not solve it? However, Ling Han advanced bravely and slashed with his sword. Hong, it also tore space and cut through regulations. It was incredibly terrifying. Everyone was astonished. This fellow didn't use the regulations, so how could he still display such terrifying combat strength? Ping, the two of them collided again, but it was still difficult to determine who was superior. Both of their physical techniques are astonishing, someone said emotionally. Tianxing was astonished. Why was his body technique so powerful? It was because he was the incarnation of the will of heaven and earth. Naturally, he could come into contact with the intrinsic power of the origin world long ago. It was just that he was limited by his realm and couldn't use it at all. However, he could use the intrinsic power to refine his body. But how could Ling Han do it? What are you? You're just an incarnation of heaven and earth with some special abilities. Otherwise, you'd just be trash, said Ling Han disdainfully. He wasn't born strong because of hard work, but because he was born this way. Just like a second-generation tycoon who was born with endless wealth, he didn't need to struggle to become tens of thousands of times stronger than ordinary people. Today, I'll show you the difference between being born and working hard. Ling Han roared and his left hand punched out. Peng, peng, peng. Each punch was incomparably heavy and didn't contain the slightest bit of regulations. However, they were even more terrifying than the suppression of the Great Tao. During these tens of thousands of years, Ling Han hadn't stopped cultivating. He had constantly used the void energy to refine his body, and his body technique had steadily improved. Even though he hadn't reached the peak of the 7th heavenly layer, he was still incomparably violent. You dare show off in front of me? Tianxing wasn't willing to be outdone. One of his hands transformed into a sword, while the other into a fist as he clashed with Ling Han. He was clearly doing this on purpose to prove how powerful he was. I was born strong, and that's my advantage. But the effort I put in is not something you can imagine. Tianxing's sword and fist attacked together, and their power wasn't any weaker than Ling Han's at all. Your body is like immortal gold. That's your advantage, but it's also your greatest weakness. Without the pressure of life and death, how could you comprehend the true essence of martial art? Ling Han sneered. Are you looking down on my combat strength? Tianxing roared. Trash. Ling Han laughed loudly. He launched a powerful attack. Peng, peng, peng. The sword and fist hit the heavens repeatedly, as if to prove his conclusion. Tianxing's face instantly turned as black as a wok. Although his physique was strong, and this kind of attack did not hurt him at all, being hit by Ling Han's attack was equivalent to saying that his battle prowess was indeed inferior to his opponent. In a battle at the same realm, his combat strength was actually inferior. As expected, Ling Han is a level higher. Mu and the other two giants began to comment. The will of martial art formed under the pressure of life and death cannot be compared to being born strong. Du Shi also nodded. Ling Han has already walked his own path. This is true strength. The door to becoming an Empyrean is already half open to him. Elder Waning Moon also expressed her admiration for Ling Han. Walking one's own path only gave one hope of becoming an Empyrean, because becoming an Empyrean required luck. The three of them had also walked their own paths of martial art, but they couldn't take that final step. This was because they were lacking some opportunities. This opportunity might allow them to reach the heavens in a single step. No matter how unwilling Tianxing was, he had to admit that Ling Han's combat strength was indeed above his. He snorted, "So what? My body is invincible. What do you have to say? Today, I'll teach you how to be a person." Ling Han continued to attack. His combat strength had been cultivated through countless life and death situations. It was not something that could be compared to being born with. There was absolutely no problem in bullying the weak. With overwhelming power, they would be able to defeat their opponent in a few moves. Even if their opponent was able to resist, they would still be able to win by relying on their physique. However, when faced with an opponent at Ling Han's level, their natural weakness was completely exposed. Bang, bang, bang. He was constantly being hit. Tianxing roared in anger. Although Ling Han's attacks couldn't hurt him, being beaten in public was a great loss of face. Only by defeating Ling Han could he make up for it. He used a powerful move. Xiao, 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 flashes of golden light shot out from his body and turned into golden arrows. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll and crossed his arms in front of his face. The golden arrows shot past, but he was unharmed. He said calmly, "You're not the only one with absolute defense. Indestructible heaven scroll," Tianxing said through gritted teeth. He had a sliver of the heavenly venerable born fate's spirit in his body. Even the Black Tower was taken by him, so it was naturally impossible that he didn't know the secrets of the indestructible heaven scroll. He knew the indestructible heaven scroll, but didn't cultivate it because it was useless to him. His body had already reached the level of the indestructible immortal gold body, and to reach the level of the indestructible heavenly venerable body, he needed too many resources. Even after he became a heavenly venerable, he might need several epochs to cultivate it. Thus, he couldn't be bothered to waste time now. It would be a useless effort. Tianxing, take this. Ling Han took a deep breath and stretched out his left hand. The 5-element thunder technique was channeled. 5-colored light danced, and after adding a flash of white lightning, it immediately turned into 9-colored divine lightning. Tianxing's expression immediately changed, and he felt a strong throbbing. Chapter 2666. His physique was comparable to immortal gold, but the methods Ling Han displayed actually made him tremble. What was going on? Ling Han moved his feet and charged towards Tianxing. Even though he was fearful, he didn't dare to take the attack head-on. He hurriedly moved his body to dodge. One chased and the other fled. In the span of several breaths, the two of them actually did not exchange a single blow. This shocked everyone below. Weren't you known to have an invincible physique? You didn't fear anyone under the Empyrean level, so why are you so cowardly right now that you don't even dare to receive my attacks? Their realms were a little far apart, so it wasn't clear. However, Mu and the other two heavyweights revealed shocked expressions. This is an Empyrean precious technique. It's no wonder that even I don't want to fight. However, even if an immortal king can use an Empyrean paragon technique, can they surpass the limits of an immortal king? As long as they can't step into the Empyrean level, what is there to fear? Could it be that this strike can actually surpass the limits of the immortal king realm? Even the three magnates couldn't be sure. After all, they were just spectating. Born to be battered and exhausted, Ling Han's explosive power was actually above his, chasing after his but to kill. He only felt his face burning. At the same time, he also had a doubt. Could Ling Han's battle prowess really break through to the quasi-heavenly venerable level? No matter how he thought about it, it was impossible. He was only a 7th firmament immortal king. Down below, Tianxing's subordinates were all speechless. The undefeated king in their hearts was actually on the run. It had to be known that even when he challenged 9th firmament immortal monarchs in the past, Innate did not show any signs of weakness. With such a comparison, the difference was just too obvious. Tianxing saw the changes in everyone's expressions. He gritted his teeth and decided that he couldn't continue like this. Otherwise, how would he have the face to see others in the future? Besides, he didn't believe that Ling Han's battle prowess was that strong. Come! He roared, and both of his hands transformed into giant hammers that smashed towards Ling Han. Bam! Since he didn't dodge or evade, he naturally immediately clashed with Ling Han. Terrifying power boiled, forming a huge explosion in the sky. Ha! I've really overestimated you. I thought. Tianxing laughed loudly. After this exchange, he realized that he had been overthinking. Ling Han's strength was only SOSO, and was not stronger than his at all. He was so fearful that he was actually frightened by Ling Han. But in the next moment, his expression changed. A terrifying power of lightning rushed into his body and started to wreak havoc and explode. It could be said that he had an immortal gold body, and even peak-stage Immortal King force couldn't injure him. However, this was lightning. It couldn't injure his body, but it didn't dissipate for a long time. Every time it circulated, his limbs would go numb, and it was extremely uncomfortable. Correct, immortal metal didn't fear lightning, but when lightning passed through immortal metal, it wouldn't consume any of its power. Each time it passed through immortal metal, it would suffer greatly. Ordinary lightning couldn't possibly affect him, but Ling Han's power clearly hadn't reached the level of a pseudo-heavenly venerable tier, so why was it that he felt so uncomfortable? Could it be that Ling Han could use the origin world's power? However, if that was the case, it would mean that Ling Han had already become a heavenly venerate. In that case, killing him would be as easy as slaughtering a chicken. How could he possibly be fighting with such difficulty? Moreover, Ling Han's body was enshrouded in 7 brilliant lights. This meant that he was a genuine 7th heaven celestial king. However, he did not know that though Ling Han could not draw upon the energy of the Void Child, he had been tempered by this kind of energy, and that was why he possessed such a frightening physique. Using this kind of energy to activate the 5-element lightning technique, he would naturally possess a sliver of the might of a heavenly venerable. Even if it was just a little, it was enough to make Tianxing suffer. After all, he was only a level 7 celestial. Tianxing's body flashed with lightning. Because of his immortal gold body, he was almost invincible in the celestial king realm. But now he was suffering because of it. The lightning didn't dissipate. Of course, if it wasn't for Tianxing, anyone else would have been killed. Feels good, right? Ling Han said. With his current strength, he could only use the 5-elemental lightning technique 9 times. But that was enough. Again. Bang. Bang. Ling Han attacked again and again, pressing the 5-elemental lightning technique on Tianxing's body. With Tianxing's current state, it was impossible for him to dodge. His body trembled and he lost all ability to fight. Tianxing collapsed to the ground, completely unconscious. However, his body was still twitching uncontrollably. Tianxing had lost this battle. But even so, Ling Han still couldn't truly harm Tianxing. He was like an immortal artifact that had been suppressed, but his body was indestructible. But this result exceeded everyone's expectations. That was Tianxing, a man known to be invincible. Even though he had lost to a level 9 celestial king, those level 9 celestial kings couldn't do anything to him. This scene was simply too shocking. In the sky, Mu and the others were also very surprised. There's one more person on the path to becoming a quasi-celestial lord, said Dushi. That's not strange. What's strange is that he's only at the level 7 celestial king. Waning Moon's eyes narrowed, revealing a strong desire to fight. I'm looking forward to his growth. Amu smiled. Everyone looked up at Ling Han. This fellow's killing power was too shocking. Even Tianxing, who was known to have an immortal gold body, had been defeated. His future achievements would definitely be shocking. There were descendants of large factions here. Their eyes sparkled. This person was definitely worth roping in. Ling Han raised his foot and stepped on Tianxing's face. He didn't use much force because Tianxing's body was like immortal gold. It was impossible for him to be injured, and he didn't want to waste any effort. But when his foot landed, a footprint appeared on Tianxing's face. Everyone's jaws dropped when they saw this. This naturally did not harm Tianxing's physical body in the slightest, but the meaning of humiliation could not be more obvious. In the future, if Tianxing did not defeat Ling Han, then he was destined to be unable to raise his head in front of Ling Han. Ling Han was going to form an undying enmity with Tianxing. Ling Han laughed 3 times and swaggered off. Yi Yan Xianlu and the others were all extremely excited. Ling Han was their flag, and defeating Tianxing, who was known to be undefeated, naturally made them feel as if they were on stimulants. This battle caused a great commotion in the academy. It was said that after Tianxing woke up, he spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood, his expression frightening. An underling went to comfort him, and was almost slapped to death by him. This battle affected Tianxing too much, causing him to fall from his pedestal. On the other hand, Ling Han replaced him, becoming the most dazzling existence among this batch of new students. Many factions wanted to befriend Ling Han. This was a future celestial venerable. There were many celestial venerables in the Yen Frost Plain now, but it still couldn't change the invincible status of celestial venerables, which was worthy of being roped in by any faction. Thus, after this battle, Ling Han continuously received invitations from various factions, inviting him to attend this banquet or that meeting, but Ling Han basically ignored them. He was organizing the resources that he had previously exchanged, choosing from among them things that were useful for him to cultivate the indestructible Heaven Scroll, and then began to cultivate in seclusion. These resources were quite abundant, equivalent to 10 times the treasures that the Academy had bestowed for 100 million years. Ling Han calculated, and it was more or less enough for him to cultivate the 8th level of the indestructible Celestial King body. Chapter 2667. Under the acceleration of time, in just 17 years, Ling Han had advanced the indestructible immortal king body to the 8th level. However, if he wanted to go further, the resources he needed would be astronomical. Ling Han planned to refine some pills and sell them again. At this moment, he received an invitation from a large force. Although he had received many invitations before, they were just compliments to him, and then they wanted to make friends with him. However, this invitation was different. It directly stated the purpose, saying that he could sell pills for Ling Han. This piqued Ling Han's interest. Because refining pills was only a means for him to obtain cultivation resources, if he could save the process of selling pills, he would be quite happy. He thought about it and decided to keep the appointment. This large force was called the Wang family. The Wang family patriarch was a third-step heavenly venerable from the Hoxing Plain. He was also the strongest person in that plane. He had come here a long time ago and brought many people from the family with him. After so many years, the Wang clan had already taken root here, sprouted, and spread its branches and leaves. In addition to the Wang family patriarch, there was also a quasi-heavenly venerable named Wang Andi, who was now resisting the frenzy in the foreign battlefield with the Wang family patriarch. The person in charge of the Wang family was called Wang Qianyang, a 9th heaven immortal king. However, this time, the Wang family did not specially invite Ling Han to a banquet. Instead, there was a direct descendant of the Wang family who had just broken through to the immortal king realm. Therefore, the Wang family invited guests from all over the world, especially the outstanding students of the martial arts institution. This direct descendant was also very famous. Her name was Wang Jiue. She was a stunning beauty and extremely talented in martial art. This time, after breaking through to the immortal king realm, she would enter the #1 martial arts institution in the world. It was said that this young lady of the Wang family had many suitors, but her standards were extremely high, and she had never shown any intimacy to any man. However, there were also other rumors that said that Wang Jiue already had someone she liked, so she did not care about other suitors. The Wang family was located in a faraway place, but because the main guests were the disciples of the martial courtyard, the main venue was placed in the martial courtyard. After all, Wang Jiue was about to enter the martial courtyard, and this banquet was also meant to brush her face. After walking for a while, Ling Han arrived at the Wang family's banquet venue. This was the cave abode of a junior of the Wang family. He was now an 8th firmament immortal king, so his strength was naturally not to be underestimated. This wasn't the Celestial King Cemetery, and every student was at least at the Emperor realm. The Wang family had a lot of face. After all, they had a third-step Empyrean patriarch and a quasi-Empyrean almighty elder. Thus, many people came, and many students felt honored to receive an invitation from the Wang family. Ling Han kept a low profile. He handed over the invitation and quietly entered the venue. He drank at the side and waited quietly. After the Wang clan received the invitation, they would definitely know that he had arrived. Naturally, someone would come out to welcome him and discuss the details of selling the pills. Ling Han sat and drank as people came and went. Many people were greeting each other and communicating with each other. Everyone was usually cultivating, so this was a rare opportunity. But there were also many people like Ling Han, sitting coldly and ignoring others. A voice sounded in Ling Han's ear. It was flustered and exasperated. Ling Han turned his head and saw that this person was somewhat familiar, but he didn't seem to remember. He asked, "Who are you?" Zhuo Kai was almost angered to death. He had been tricked by Ling Han, but Ling Han didn't even remember who he was. He gritted his teeth and said, "I'm Zhuo Kai." Ling Han thought for a moment and said, "You're Zhuo Kaizi." He finally remembered. This was a second-generation young master he had dealt with when he first entered the martial courtyard. He had a quasi-Empyrean patriarch, so he was very arrogant and despotic. Zhuo Kai was fuming. "I'm Zhuo Kai, not Kaizi." "In any case, there's not much difference," said Ling Han with a smile. He naturally didn't care about this kind of second-generation young master. Zhuo Kai snorted and said, "Ling Han, don't think that just because I can't deal with you, my ancestor will come down from the outer realm battlefield to rest. How can you still be arrogant then?" Ling Han frowned slightly. "I don't bother with you because I don't care about trash like you at all. But you are jumping up and down in front of me, thinking that I don't dare to deal with you." He directly made a move and pressed toward Zhuo Kai. Almost 100 million years had passed, and he had already become a seventh heaven immortal king. But Zhuo Kai was still in the same place. He clearly saw this palm strike coming, but he couldn't dodge it all. With a clear sound, he was heavily slapped. Immediately, half of his face was slapped off, revealing a bloody chin. It was a horrifying and disgusting sight. Zhuo Kai screamed in pain, and it immediately attracted the attention of others. They all came over. "Isn't that Ling Han? There's also Zhuo Kai. That dumb fool has gone to stir up trouble again. He's really kicked an iron plate this time. Who do you think Ling Han is? Even Tianxing was trampled on by him. He's the most awesome person in this batch of students. Don't you know? Lord Zhuobing is about to return from the outer realm battlefield. Oh, no wonder this guy dares to be so arrogant. He's a quasi-celestial venerable, and one who has returned from a bloody battle in the outer realm battlefield. His battle prowess isn't something that a quasi-celestial venerable who has just broken through can compare to. Even the most monstrous of celestial kings can only respectfully call him Lord when they see him. So, Ling Han is feeling great right now, but if Lord Zhuobing gets angry, he won't have a good time either." Everyone chimed in, and many people were even gloating. After all, Ling Han's rise had been too fast and too sudden, and many people were envious. Ling Han didn't care in the slightest. If Zhuobing returned and made trouble for him, he would bring out the black donkey. The large black dog was very close to it, so it definitely wouldn't be a problem for it to come out and scare people. Right at this moment, there was the sound of jade ornaments jingling, and a fragrance wafted over. A young girl also walked out from the inner courtyard. She was dressed in a green palace dress, and her black hair cascaded down like a waterfall. Her skin was as white as snow, and her beauty was otherworldly. When this young girl appeared, she instantly attracted the gazes of many people, and all of them became passionate. She was the star of today's banquet, the pearl of the Wang clan, Wang Jiu. "Fairy Jia Yu." Many people called out, and they seemed very passionate. Even with Ling Han's picky eyes, he couldn't help but nod and call her a beauty. From this, it could be seen that this girl was indeed astonishingly beautiful. No wonder she was called the pearl of the Wang clan, and attracted the admiration of countless people. Wang Jiu curtsied to the crowd, a sweet smile on her beautiful face, but she ignored everyone, appearing very arrogant. Her gaze quickly swept over Zhuo Kai, and she couldn't help but frown and ask, "What's going on?" At her banquet, someone had actually injured someone. This was not giving face to the Wang clan, nor was it giving face to her, Wang Jiu. Naturally, there were people who rushed to curry favor, and they recounted what had just happened. Wang Jiu instantly revealed a displeased expression, and said to Ling Han, "Young Master Ling, whatever grievances you have with young Master Zhuo, you can settle them outside. This is the Wang clan." Ling Han smiled and said, "All right, I'll be careful next time." In his eyes, Wang Jiu was only a spoiled little girl, and he couldn't be bothered to lower himself to her level. Chapter 2669. Ling Han formed a palm with his right hand and activated the 9 transformations heaven scripture, instantly increasing his battle prowess by countless times. He couldn't activate the complete celestial paragon technique at the same time because it was too powerful. He would explode before injuring anyone. However, the 9 transformations heaven scripture was enough to deal with Ma Yuhai. An ant dares to match me? Ma Yuhai couldn't help but sneer. A mere 7th heaven celestial king actually dared to clash head-on with him? He was a peak 8th heaven celestial king. Bang! Their hands collided, and instantly, a frightening shockwave spread out. In just an instant, this abode was flattened as if it were dry weeds and rotten wood, and Ma Yuhai's expression changed abruptly. His right hand was immediately shattered, and then it continued upwards. The bones were shattered one after another, and it only stopped when it reached his shoulder. Ma Yuhai was furious, shocked, and afraid. Ling Han was clearly only a 7th heaven celestial king, so how could his explosive power be so powerful? He couldn't even withstand a single blow. This was natural. Ling Han's battle prowess had already surpassed the 9th heaven in the first place, so he wouldn't be much inferior to him. Moreover, he had also used the 9 transformation heaven scroll to increase his battle prowess countless times, so any 9th heaven celestial king would have to retreat. How could they face him head-on? Ma Yuhai completely disregarded Ling Han. If he insisted on facing him head-on, he would be asking for trouble. How could he not be injured? Ma Yuhai's entire body sprayed out a mist of blood, and he collapsed. He didn't die, just fainted. Amidst the ruins, many balls of light fluttered. Naturally, everyone had activated their source energy shields to protect themselves. More importantly, several 9th heaven celestial kings had joined forces to stabilize the situation. Otherwise, most of the people here would have been crippled. Everyone was dumbfounded. Ma Yuhai, a peak 8th heaven celestial king, actually couldn't withstand a single blow from Ling Han? They didn't dare to imagine this. Wang Jiyue's mouth was also half open. Her heart was in a complete mess. In her heart, Ma Yuhai was an invincible king. Only he could defeat the strong, and no one in the same realm could match him. How could she have imagined that he would lose to a 7th heaven celestial king? Ma Yuhai's glorious and invincible image suddenly collapsed. Ling Han strode forward and arrived at Ma Yuhai's side. He lifted one of his feet high and stomped down. Ma Yuhai woke up from the intense pain. He discovered that his other hand had also been trampled off. There was not even a trace of flesh connecting it, as if it had been chopped off. Ling Han, it's about time you stop, said a 9th firmament immortal king. His face was covered in frost. This was a great figure of the Wang family. His name was Wang Yangming, and he was an emperor. Level 9 was his limit, and he had no hope of becoming an emperor. However, wasn't a 9th firmament immortal king awesome enough? He was invincible beneath the heavenly venerable realm. He was not used to Ling Han's arrogance. You had just destroyed the Wang family's banquet, and now you were committing murder in front of him. Did you really think he was dead? Ling Han raised his foot again and aimed at Ma Yuhai's left leg. Then he casually said to Wang Yangming, "What did you say? Don't try to pick." Wang Yangming had just opened his mouth when Ling Han's foot had already landed, crushing Ma Yuhai's left leg. This was a blatant provocation. Wang Yangming's expression turned ugly. His hair fluttered without any wind, and his eyes shot out cold light. He wanted to take action and suppress this audacious madman. Young friend Ling is indeed bold. Another 9th firmament immortal king laughed loudly. I'm not the wrong person. He was clearly only in his 40s, but he addressed himself as an old man. Family head. Wang Yangming was shocked and walked towards that person. This was the current family head of the Wang family, Wang Qinyang. He had a high chance of becoming an emperor. Such an important figure was actually speaking up for Ling Han? Ling Han smiled. You were the one who invited me. With his current strength, he could even be on equal footing with a 9th firmament immortal king. There was no need to be apprehensive or polite. That's right. I'm Wang Qianyang, said the Wang family head with a smile. Young friend Ling, can I have a word with you? Ling Han looked at Wang Qianyang for a while. Although Wang Qianyang was also a 9th firmament immortal king, Ling Han felt that Wang Qianyang was more than 10 times stronger than Wang Yangming. He thought for a moment and said, "All right, for the sake of the Wang family head, I'll spare this person's leg." Previously, Ma Yuhai had said that he would cripple his hand, so Ling Han had decided to break his limbs. However, Wang Qianyang was clearly powerful, yet he was polite to him. This made Ling Han decide to give Wang Qianyang some face. Wang Yangming was about to explode from anger. How could a mere 7th firmament immortal king like you give face to the Wang family? Wang Qianyang laughed and waved at Ling Han. "Young friend Ling, come here." Ling Han walked over. Wang Qianyang led the way, and the two arrived at the mountain peak. Clearly, they did not want others to hear their conversation. Wang Jiyue thought for a moment and followed them up the mountain. Everyone gritted their teeth and thought that Ling Han was really fierce. He had attacked 3 times at the Wang family's banquet, and he was extremely ferocious. He had even destroyed a Wang family descendant's cave abode. However, the Wang family head was not offended at all. Instead, he was polite. "Hee, if any of you can defeat Tianxing, you will definitely receive the same treatment," someone said leisurely. The moment this was said, everyone was speechless. Defeat Tianxing? What kind of joke was this? Even most 9th firmament immortal kings could not do it. Only powerhouses like Ah Mu and Du Shi could do it. However, Ling Han had done it with his 7th firmament cultivation. Just based on this, what did it matter if he was treated as an honored guest by the Wang family? On the mountain peak, Ling Han and Wang Qianyang stood side by side. "Young friend, do you also study the alchemy Tao?" Wang Qianyang asked curiously. He had lived for more than 7 epochs, but he still felt that he did not have enough time. In order to become a heavenly venerate, he had been in seclusion almost all the time. However, Ling Han's achievements in martial art were astonishing, so how could he still have time to study alchemy? Ling Han smiled and said, "I don't just study. I can refine any kind of alchemical pill." How arrogant! Wang Qianyang was taken aback. Then he laughed loudly. "Young friend Ling, you are really not modest at all." "I'm just speaking the truth," Ling Han said. Wang Qianyang nodded. "I invited young friend here because I want to do alchemical pill business with you. I believe young friend's energy is limited, and you cannot waste it on trivial matters. Thus, the Wang family can take care of gathering materials and selling alchemical pills. Young friend, you only need to refine pills." "Oh, then what about the distribution ratio?" Ling Han did not object. He indeed did not want to waste time on trivial matters. "Half-half," Wang Qianyang said. Ling Han only needed to refine pills, and he could take half of the profits. This sounded very beneficial to Ling Han, but in reality, that was not the case. 5-star alchemists were too rare. Which one of them was not incredibly aloof? It was basically impossible to hire them. Ling Han thought for a moment and said, "I want divine metal." Divine metal. Wang Qianyang was shocked. With Ling Han's ability and strength, could it be that he did not have a celestial tool? No, if Ling Han only lacked a celestial tool, he would not have said this. "All your profits will be paid in divine metal." Chapter 2670. Ling Han nodded and smiled. Not bad. The Wang family was powerful, and their ancestor was even a 3rd-step celestial master. Therefore, it would be much more difficult for the Wang family to get immortal metal. Otherwise, Ling Han wouldn't need to cooperate with the Wang family. He could refine the elixirs himself and get all the profits. Wang Qianyang thought about it and said, "Okay." But he immediately said, "Immortal metal is too precious. You need to refine many elixirs to get one." "I know." Ling Han nodded. "Send the materials here tomorrow." Wang Qianyang laughed loudly. Ling Han's swift and decisive style was very much to his liking. A thought flashed in his mind, and he had an idea. However, after a moment of hesitation, he thought, "Let's wait for this boy to concoct a few cauldrons of alchemical pills and see the success rate and quality of the pills before we decide." "Goodbye." Ling Han cupped his hands. Since the matter was settled, There was no need for him to stay. "Young friend, don't you want to have a drink?" Wang Qianyang asked. Ling Han didn't say anything. He just smacked his lips in the direction of the mountain. Only now did Wang Qianyang realize that the abode below had already been destroyed by the aftermath of the battle between Ling Han and Ma Yuhai. He could only smile bitterly and said to Ling Han, "Young friend, please go ahead." When Ling Han was far away, Wang Jiyue walked out. "Grandpa, why were you so polite to that arrogant man?" she asked coquettishly. Wang Qianyang smiled kindly. He always liked this granddaughter. He is really capable. Of course he can be arrogant. Wang Jiyue pouted. He can only fight a little. Haha. Wang Qianyang laughed. He stroked his granddaughter's head and suddenly said, "Yeah, you are not young anymore. Now that you have become a celestial king, it is time to think about marriage." Wang Jiyue was suddenly shy. She stamped her feet and said, "I don't want to get married. I want to stay with Grandpa." Silly girl, who doesn't get married when they grow up? Ling Han returned to his own abode and recounted what had happened to the women, which also made them shake their heads repeatedly. This husband of hers was really worrisome, provoking trouble wherever he went. Early the next morning, as expected, the Wang family sent a heavyweight over to escort the pill refining materials. It was Wang Yangming. These materials were too precious. What if they were robbed on the way? With a ninth firmament immortal king escorting him, even if he encountered someone he could not defeat, it was easy for him to escape. Wang Yangming clearly did not have a good impression of Ling Han. After arriving here, he tossed a spatial god tool to Ling Han and hurriedly ran away. It was as if looking at Ling Han would cause him to feel annoyed. Ling Han naturally did not care. Wang Yangming did not like him, and he did not have a good impression of Wang Yangming. For the sake of immortal gold, Ling Han began to concoct pills. He first took a look at the materials sent by the Wang family and couldn't help but sigh. As expected of a rich and powerful family, rich and overbearing. These materials were enough to concoct 7 cauldrons of Immortal King Supreme pills, and according to Wang Yangming, this was only an insignificant portion. A force that existed in terms of epics had extraordinary wealth. Ling Han operated his constitution, and the flow of time accelerated. In just a few hours he had concocted the first cauldron of pills. "It's flawless." Ling Han smiled. As his cultivation increased, concocting Immortal King Supreme pills was also easy. Not only could he guarantee the success rate, but the quality was either high grade or supreme grade. He continued to work hard, and in one day, he had concocted all 7 cauldrons of pills. Then, he informed Wang Yangming to come get the pills. Before long, Wang Yangming came, but his expression was a bit dark. "Why are you looking for me?" he said impatiently. "The alchemical pill has been concocted. Take it." Ling Han tossed out the spatial god tool. Wang Yangming sneered. "What a joke, only one day had passed, and you had concocted the pills. Do you think I only know how to eat pills and don't know alchemy at all? Kid, you have to be practical." He was just about to educate Ling Han on the principles of being a person, but when his divine sense entered the spatial god tool, he exclaimed in surprise, because there were indeed 7 bottles of pills inside. They couldn't be fake, right? He hurriedly took out a bottle of pills, and after pulling out the stopper, his expression instantly changed. Real pills. He changed another bottle, and it was still real pills. All 7 bottles were real pills. Awesome. Concocting 7 cauldrons of Immortal King Supreme pills in one day. Wait a minute. He looked shocked. 7 cauldrons of pills was just a theoretical value, but wasn't it very normal to concoct pills and explode cauldrons? Especially Immortal King Supreme pills, which were naturally even more difficult to concoct, and cauldrons exploding was a very common thing. To concoct 7 cauldrons in a row, and all the cauldrons were extremely lucky and didn't explode. Was there such a coincidence? Wang Yangming took a deep breath, and then nodded. "Little friend Ling, I underestimated you previously." He bowed slightly towards Ling Han and bowed. Ling Han couldn't help but change his opinion of this person. He was indeed from a wealthy family. Although it was inevitable that he would be arrogant, he was able to rise and fall, and his bearing was also extraordinary. He nodded. Well said. I'm going to see the patriarch immediately. I hope we can have a deeper relationship in the future. Wang Yangming smiled. Ling Han bared his teeth. This old man changed his attitude too quickly, and he couldn't get used to it all at once. He kept feeling that the old man had other intentions. Wang Yangming left and returned very quickly. This time, he brought more materials, enough to concoct 20 cauldrons of Immortal King Supreme pills. Ling Han continued to concoct pills, but 3 days later, he informed Wang Yangming to come over again. Although he was already mentally prepared, Wang Yangming was still shocked. 20 cauldrons, not a single pill less, had reached the theoretical maximum. He sighed in amazement, took the pills, and left again. A day later, Wang Qianyang came in person, as well as Wang Jiyue. She had already passed the 9 Extremes formation and became an official student of the Martial Arts Institution. Little friend, although this old man has already overestimated you, I didn't expect that I would still underestimate you. Wang Qianyang sighed. He thought of the conversation he had with Ling Han a few days ago. When Ling Han said that he could concoct any pill, he didn't take it seriously. He thought that Ling Han was young and successful, and it was inevitable that he would exaggerate. He didn't expect that Ling Han was not only telling the truth, but also being humble. Wang Jiyue's beautiful eyes lit up, and she looked at Ling Han in surprise. In the past few days, she had also learned a lot about Ling Han, and finally knew how powerful this guy was. In comparison, Ma Yuhai was practically trash. Little friend, here are 3 pieces of immortal gold. Wang Qianyang handed over a spatial divine tool. Ling Han naturally wouldn't be polite. He reached out and took it. After scanning it with his divine sense, he immediately smiled. As expected of the Wang clan, they were really rich and overbearing. They could even take out something as precious as immortal gold at one time. That's a lot. Although Ling Han was happy, he still said it. Although he had concocted nearly 30 cauldrons of pills, under the premise that the profits were split in half, 1 piece of immortal gold was enough to compensate him. Wang Qianyang laughed loudly. The remaining 2 pieces can be taken as an advance payment. Was there such a good thing? Ling Han smiled. Wang clan leader, do you have anything else? Wang Qianyang was pleased. This guy really knew what he wanted. My Yu is not young anymore, and she wants to find a good son-in-law. Before he could finish his sentence, Ling Han said, I have a brother who has amazing talent in martial art, but he is currently unmarried. Wang Qianyang's face instantly darkened. Chapter 2671. Just now he was praising Ling Han for being smart, so why did he suddenly become stupid? Wang Qianyang naturally knew that it wasn't that Ling Han had suddenly become stupid, but that he was tactfully refusing. However, Wang Qianyang was very puzzled. His granddaughter was as beautiful as a goddess, and it wasn't like Ling Han hadn't seen her before, so why did he refuse without even considering? Wang Jiyue looked very embarrassed. Although they didn't say it out loud, who couldn't hear the meaning behind it? Ling Han actually refused her. This self-righteous guy, what right did he have to be so arrogant? He thought he could ignore her just because his cultivation speed was faster and he knew how to refine some pills? This goddamn bastard. Wang Qianyang naturally didn't care that his granddaughter was about to explode from anger. He was also a wily old fox, and since Ling Han had already spoken to this extent, he wouldn't ask for a rebuff. Thus, he said, then I'll go and search for more divine metal for my young friend. Thank you, Ling Han said with a smile. Wang Qianyang left with his granddaughter. Although Ling Han saw that Wang Jiyue was about to explode, he pretended not to see it. At his current level, did he still need to care about a small First Heaven Celestial King, even if this Celestial King had a powerful background? He continued to refine pills. At this stage, the 2 things he wanted to complete the most were the indestructible Celestial King body to the 9th level, and the Divine Demon Sword to the level of a heavenly venerable treasure. To complete these 2 things, he needed to control a huge amount of wealth, so he could only work hard to refine pills. But the news that the Wang clan intended to betroth the pearl in their palm to Ling Han spread like wildfire, which made everyone envious. Wang Jiyue's conditions were too outstanding, and who didn't want to pluck this delicate flower? And when Ma Yuhai heard this news, he was so angry that he smashed his cave abode. He was too angry. He had been cultivating a relationship with Wang Jiyue for millions of years, and just when he was about to reap the harvest, someone else interfered, not only causing him to suffer great humiliation, but also taking away his future wife. This anger, he couldn't bear it. However, he was no match for Ling Han. Although he had indeed been careless at that time, he had replayed the scene in his mind. Even if he had gone all out, he would not have been able to withstand such an attack. What to do? Could it be that they were just going to watch helplessly and let it develop? Ask for help. After thinking for a long time, he finally made a decision. Although it was embarrassing for him to ask someone to help him deal with a seventh heaven celestial king given his strength, it was better than millions of years of hard work going down the drain. Moreover, he really liked Wang Jiyue, but it wasn't entirely because she could help him. He walked out of the cave and traversed through the mountains until he arrived at the foot of a perilous peak. Just as he was about to ascend the mountain, an old man with a stooped back suddenly appeared. He coughed repeatedly and said, "So it's young Master Hai. What are you doing here?" Although this old man's qi and blood were on the decline, and he could die at any time, Ma Yuhai didn't dare to underestimate him. This old man was a fierce person in the past, and he had killed countless powerful existences. But later on he had caused too much trouble, so he had no choice but to hide in the No. 1 Martial Academy to avoid the limelight. Besides, the person behind this old man was even more terrifying. "Greetings, Lord Qin Shuang." Ma Yuhai bowed respectfully and then said, "I have something to ask of young Master He." "Young Master is in seclusion." The old man, Qin Shuang, said. Ma Yuhai thought for a moment and said, "Then I'd like to ask Lord Qin Shuang to help me." He took out a bottle of pills and said, "This is the Empyrean pill that my father extracted his own blood essence to refine. I believe it will be of some help to Lord Qin Shuang." Qin Shuang's expression couldn't help but change, revealing an excited expression. He was a ninth heaven celestial king. Of course, he had reached the peak level long ago, but he had been suffering from being unable to break through to the Empyrean realm. Although Ma Yuhai's father was only a quasi-Empyrean, and the Empyrean pill that he refined was not worthy of its name, it was still of great help to him. It was possible for him to peek into the mysteries of the Empyrean realm. Refining the Empyrean pill required the extraction of one's own blood essence. Whether it was an Empyrean or a quasi-Empyrean, it was a huge consumption. It was unknown how many years it would take to refine one. If it wasn't for Ma Yuhai's father being a quasi-Empyrean, perhaps even his grandfather wouldn't be willing to refine his own blood essence into pills. Qin Shuang couldn't refuse. Reaching such a height, the only thing that could be put in his eyes and in his heart was the matter of breaking through to the Empyrean realm. "What do you want this old man to do?" Qin Shuang said. "Kill a person." Ma Yuhai said, his face was full of ferocious color. Qin Shuang didn't care. He had killed countless people in the past, and the Heaven's Chosen level was not a small number. Naturally, he wouldn't be moved. "Ling Han, tell me about his specific information." Ling Han concentrated on alchemy. He could refine several furnaces in a day. He believed that even with the Wang family's wealth, it would soon be refined by him. Of course, the Wang family would definitely be happy about this. Resources could only be reflected when they were converted into usable pills. However, the peaceful days didn't last for a few days. Yi suddenly visited. "What's the matter?" Ling Han still took the time to come out. "Ma Yuhai publicly said that he wants you to refuse the Wang family's marriage request. Otherwise, he will definitely let you be good," Yi said. Ling Han was surprised. This Ma Yuhai really didn't eat enough lessons? Previously, he was beaten so badly by him, and now he actually began to be full of himself again. Where did his confidence come from? "Don't pay attention." He shook his head. He had originally rejected the Wang family's marriage proposal. If the Wang family spread the news, wouldn't it make others think that he was afraid? But in order to prove this point, he had to agree to the marriage with the Wang family. Wasn't that even more ridiculous? Seeing that Ling Han didn't respond, a few days later, Ma Yuhai sent an invitation to Ling Han again, asking him to go to his own cave residence and thoroughly settle this matter. Ling Han couldn't help but sneer. Who did this guy think he was, saying that he would go just because he wanted him to go? He once again ignored this person. Now he had to refine pills every day and was very busy. However, what happened in the next few days made Ling Han angry. Yan Xianlu and the others, all those who had come from the celestial realm were challenged, but all of them lost miserably and were beaten beyond recognition. In the academy, as long as the difference in cultivation level was not more than 2 layers, one could make a move without asking for the opponent's permission. Needless to say, this was definitely related to Ma Yuhai. Otherwise, the timing was too coincidental. Just at this moment, Ma Yuhai once again sent an invitation to Ling Han, asking him to meet him at the Great Flame Mountain 3 days later. If Ling Han did not agree, then the challenges directed at the cultivators of the celestial realm would continue. Husband, Ma Yuhai is clearly not a match for you, yet he has repeatedly provoked you. There must be a trick here. Zhu Xian'er said. Ling Han nodded. He should have expected from the start that I would ignore him, so going to his cave residence to keep the appointment is only a pretense. Everything is for the sake of the Great Flame Mountain. There might be a supreme elite ambushing us on the way, bewitching Maiden Rose said. Ling Han stretched out a hand and knocked on the table and said, there are only 2 heavenly venerables in the academy now, and neither of them is related to Ma Yuhai. Then, in the Celestial King tier, who can kill me? Chapter 2673. This was fatal to other 7th Firmament Immortal Monarchs. The reason why Celestial Kings were so powerful was because they stood at the height of the laws. They could directly use the laws and represent heaven and earth to mete out punishments. Why was there a saying that the 9 heavens of the Celestial King realm was like ascending to the heavens with every step? It was also because of the rules. Just as Qin Shuang was doing now, he directly scattered the nearby rules. With his higher realm, he could obviously extract the rules of heaven and earth in a wider range, but Ling Han couldn't. Could a celestial king who had been stripped of regulations be stronger than a severing mundane tier? Ha! Qin Shuang laughed wildly and waved the saw knife. Ling Han's secret method is strong and has a bird's use. As long as the other party has no rules to call, it is a dead crab. One hit can take a life. Ling Han was unmoved. He brandished his divine demon sword and moved toward Qin Shuang. Boom! When the 2 fairy tools collided, it immediately triggered a violent fluctuation, and Qin Shuang's body trembled and was sent flying. He turned pale with fright, unable to understand why he was at a disadvantage in terms of strength. How could that be? One had to know that in the previous attacks, Ling Han was not a match for him at all, and the gap between them was not just a little. Why was it that he was the one losing here? Ling Han's strength has skyrocketed. Qin Shuang immediately said in his heart. With his eyesight, of course, he could immediately judge it. In fact, Ling Han's strength has not improved. On the contrary, it has dropped a little. His strength had dropped too much. This was very normal. Although he could still extract the rules, he had come from a place far away. Originally, this was nothing. Even if he could only extract 10% of the rules, it was still an endless suppression when compared to Ling Han's 0. The problem now was that Ling Han's strength hadn't dropped because he couldn't extract the rules, but his strength had been greatly reduced because he had extracted fewer rules. In comparison, he was actually inferior to Ling Han in terms of strength. Thinking about this, Qin Shuang was shocked and regretful. He was shocked. Ling Han must have cultivated physical skills, which was why he could be so ferocious even when he couldn't mobilize the rules. However, this brat's physical skills were too domineering. He could actually stand at the same height as the rules, or even a little stronger. What he regretted was that he had personally shattered the nearby space and broken the rules. He pushed himself into the mire. Wasn't he an idiot? Thanks, Ling Han said, adding insult to injury. Qin Shuang couldn't help but blush. This is really ironic. Before, he was shameless and arrogant. He was confident that the overall situation was in control. He thought that as long as he made a move, he could kill Ling Han. The result was the opposite. Don't mention killing Ling Han. He also suffered some small losses. He roared angrily and pointed the saw knife at Ling Han. Little brat, how dare you mock this old man? How dare you? What? You've come to kill me, yet I still have to be respectful to you? Am I an idiot, or are you trying to be despicable? Ling Han's words were unforgiving. He had been trained by the large black dog, and his ability to insult others was definitely not inferior to his battle prowess. Qin Shuang was so angry that his head was flying. He didn't talk nonsense with Ling Han anymore. Another knife slashed over. Ling Han was fearless. Not only did he wave the divine demon sword to meet it, but his left hand also condensed into a fist, blasting at Qin Shuang. During this period of time, he was in an absolutely strong period. He could completely suppress Qin Shuang. Qin Shuang was extremely depressed. His strength was far above Ling Han. However, because he didn't think that Ling Han actually cultivated a terrifying physical skill, the result was a mistake. He lost everything. Now he could only be beaten violently. He almost couldn't recognize his mother. But after all, he was the peak emperor star of the ninth heaven, and he controlled this large formation. He was changing the space here. The space had been changed, and the rules were naturally restored to their original state. At that time, he was still the overlord of the ninth heaven, and Ling Han would be beaten back to his original form. With the help of the celestial tool, Qin Shuang could barely hold on. After paying the price of being hit by Ling Han's 3 punches, he finally drew another side of the world to change. Suddenly, the frenzied rules returned to calm. Boy, you have to pay the price. Qin Shuang roared. He was hit by Ling Han's 3 punches. Even with his strength, he broke a rib, arm bone, and shoulder bone. He couldn't recover for a long time. But now that the rules were back, his injuries were immediately recovered. His eyes exuded an ominous glint. You have completely angered me. Before, he was still old and decrepit, but now he was beyond angry. Naturally, he couldn't care less. He only had one thought. Take down Ling Han, torture him enough, and then kill him. Ling Han laughed loudly. A villain who hides his head and shows his tail. He only knows how to sneak attack. If we fight at the same tier, I can kill you with one finger. Now I have to spend some effort. Qin Shuang suppressed his anger, waved the saber in his right hand, and grabbed a great path in his left hand. It turned into a giant rod and smashed towards Ling Han. This was the embodiment of his true battle prowess. Ling Han smiled faintly. His current battle prowess had also entered the ninth heaven. Even if he couldn't defeat the peak ninth heaven emperor star, everyone was within this level. Above him was the quasi-celestial venerable. That level was the same. So what if he was a little weaker? Hong hong hong. The 2 great elites fought, but Ling Han wasn't afraid at all. Every move was a struggle with Qin Shuang. In terms of battle prowess, Ling Han was indeed no match for him. Moreover, he was even at a great disadvantage. However, in terms of physique, Ling Han was ridiculously powerful. Those who could surpass him at the Celestial King tier were only those who were born with such a physique. The large black dog could also be considered one of them. After all, he had also cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Therefore, his battle prowess was no match, but Ling Han was almost unharmed. As long as he blocked the saw saber, with Qin Shuang's own battle prowess, if she wanted to hurt Ling Han. It was difficult. Even when Ling Han operated the indestructible Heaven Scroll, he could withstand a celestial tool. However, if he didn't become a celestial venerable, he could only continuously operate the indestructible Heaven Scroll for about 2 hours. 10 moves, 100 moves, 1,000 moves. Ling Han was extremely tenacious. I have to admit that you are the strongest 7th heaven I have ever seen. Qin Shuang suddenly stopped attacking, as if she admired Ling Han very much. Ling Han shook his head. In the 9th heaven I have seen, you can't rank in the top 10. For example, the big black dog, Du Shi, Mu, the Imperial Void Celestial King, and so on, which one was stronger than Qin Shuang? Qin Shuang couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. He commented like this from the identity of a superior, with a condescending momentum, but when Ling Han opened his mouth, he directly demoted him to the ditch. How could he still maintain a high and mighty demeanor? This brat's mouth was even more terrifying than his battle prowess. Brat with a cheap mouth, you really angered me. Qin Shuang trembled all over, a golden light flowing in his eyes, like tears, constantly falling down. Not only that, his hair also changed from gray to gold, his skin tightened from flabby and shriveled, turning into a golden color, and his stooped figure returned to being tall and straight. Now, he seemed to have suddenly changed from an old man of 60 to 70 years old to a young man. A cold light flashed in Ling Han's eyes. Are you finally going to come up with all your strength? Reaching the Celestial King realm, which one didn't have an unlimited lifespan and no longer feared the immortal's calamity. How could it be like Qin Shuang? Therefore, he was either sick in the head, deliberately pretending to be like this, or he was cultivating some strange art. This was caused by the art. Chapter 2674. Haha. Qin Shuang looked up to the sky and laughed. Now his figure was tall and sturdy, and his whole body was golden. Everyone thinks that I, Qin Shuang, entered the martial arts institution and threw myself under He Yufeng because I was chaste. This is indeed a reason, but the main reason is that I want to cultivate this heavenly feather sacred metal technique. Now, I have a small success, I will let you boy taste the power. His feet bounced. Pung! The whole person suddenly flew out, the speed was extremely fast. Ling Han was surprised. Qin Shuang's explosion this time was not accelerated by using the rules of space to travel through space, but the speed of his physical body was too fast. How much speed a martial artist could exert was limited by 2 points. First, extreme speed, and second, the endurance of the physical body. Because under high-speed movement, the body would be under terrible pressure, and even celestial kings could be torn apart because of such pressure. Therefore, for most celestial kings, the actual speed was far from reaching the extreme speed. But just now, Qin Shuang's speed definitely exceeded the extreme speed, or rather, exceeded the extreme speed he had been maintaining before. It was because he had metallized his body, making his physique incomparably tyrannical. This speed was too fast, and when Ling Han reacted, Qin Shuang had already pounced in front of him, and a saber was swung over. Ling Han barely raised the divine demon sword and struck. Wang, the celestial weapons clashed, raising a terrible aftermath. Ping, 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 it began to wreak havoc in the space, destroying the rules. Qin Shuang roared, and a palm slapped again, pressing towards Ling Han's chest. Ling Han operated the indestructible heaven scroll, taking this blow head-on. Ping, after a hit, Ling Han was immediately sent flying, while Qin Shuang laughed loudly, and he grabbed a new space to replace. Ling Han flew backward, hitting the edge of this great formation before being forced to stop. There were symbols on his chest, and it was a long time before they dimmed. He only felt that his chest was a little boiling, and his throat was itchy, wanting to vomit blood. He operated the indestructible heaven scroll, and he was actually beaten to the point of almost vomiting blood. The power of this strike was truly astonishing. This is a method created by a quasi-Empyrean, Qin Shuang laughed. When I escaped into the martial courtyard and asked He Yufeng for shelter, it was because I killed the only son of the quasi-Empyrean and avoided the limelight. Also, it just so happens that I have time to cultivate this Empyrean precious technique. Ling Han came to a sudden realization. No wonder his opponent's attack was actually able to shake the defense of the indestructible heaven scroll. It was because this was a pseudo-heavenly venerable tier treasured technique. But because it had the word accurate in it, it naturally couldn't compare to a true Empyrean paragon technique. Thus, it only shook Ling Han's chest until it began to boil, but it didn't truly injure his internal organs. This fellow was really audacious to the extreme, even daring to kill a quasi-Empyrean's only son. Ling Han scratched his head. How dare he talk about others? Wasn't he the same kind of person? Moreover, if he killed someone, he would definitely not become a slave under someone else. I've really overestimated you. You're just a lackey. His face was full of disdain. Qin Shuang was furious. He had cultivated a pseudo-heavenly venerable tier treasured technique and was also a 9th heaven peak imperial star. He was invincible in the celestial king tier, and a mere 7th heaven celestial king actually dared to mock him like this? Die! He attacked again. Ling Han chuckled. This time, he didn't dodge at all, and when Qin Shuang approached, Xiao, a black shadow suddenly shot out from his chest, heading towards Qin Shuang to greet her. A blow blasted, and Qin Shuang was instantly sent flying. Yahoo! That black shadow turned into a large dog. Who else could it be but the despicable large black dog? Want to kill Grandpa Dog's human pet? Have you asked Grandpa Dog? The large black dog stood like a human, assuming a punching posture. His iron underwear reflected light, and with his wretched face, he was extremely despicable. Ling Han couldn't help but kick out. Damn dog, who are you talking about? You're actually in the martial arts academy. Qin Shuang was shocked. He had studied Ling Han's information in detail and knew that he was on good terms with the large black dog, but the large black dog was clearly not in the martial arts academy, so how could he suddenly appear? Grandpa Dog has amazing foresight. I know that someone wants to make a move on my little brother, so Grandpa Dog came back to kill a few such dregs, the large black dog said with his claws behind his back, looking as if he was very smart and everything was under his control. Ling Han wanted to kick him again. It was clear that this despicable dog had failed to steal a pseudo-heavenly venerable's treasure trove, and thus fled back to the martial arts academy. He originally wanted to go to the appointment alone. In any case, with his strength, it wasn't difficult for him to leave, but the large black dog volunteered, so Ling Han brought him along. Qin Shuang frowned, but immediately revealed a confident expression. So what if there's one more? It'll just take me a little more effort. He attacked again, brandishing his saber horizontally, revealing his incomparable confidence. In front of Grandpa Dog, dregs like you are also qualified to be arrogant. The large black dog stretched out his paw, forcefully shaking the celestial tool. After reaching the 9th heaven, one would be on par with regulations, and celestial tools only represented the highest destructive power of regulations. Thus, 9th heaven celestial kings didn't fear celestial tools at all. Under the influence of regulations, forcefully shaking a celestial tool was a piece of cake. The two 9th heaven celestial kings clashed, and it could be seen that the large black dog quickly gained the upper hand. In his last life, he had followed the heavenly venerable born fate and cultivated a supreme cultivation technique. However, due to his aptitude, he was unable to cultivate the indestructible heaven scroll, nor was he able to take the final step. However, after the heavenly venerable born fate had passed away, he had used a secret technique to bury his last life and nurture a new life in his old womb. He had truly narrowly escaped death. He had successfully lived a second life, which was different from Ji-wooming. He hadn't reincarnated. Instead, he had undergone a great rebirth based on the foundation of his previous life. This was more difficult, but the degree of qualitative change was also greater. The current large black dog's evolution index should have soared to 12, and he had an extremely high chance of pushing open the door to the heavenly venerable tier. The large black dog yelled loudly. Not only had he gained the upper hand, but he was also incessantly blabbering. He was extremely sarcastic. If Ling Han's sarcastic technique was only at the rudimentary level, then the large black dog would be at the level of great accomplishment. Qin Shuang's depression could be imagined. Not only was he going to be ravaged by the large black dog physically, but he was also going to be ravaged mentally. This caused him to feel immense pressure. After fighting for a short while, he had already lost his fighting spirit. He decided to flee. Otherwise, it was possible that he would be angered to death here. He had grasped the core of the formation, and with a single thought, the formation would immediately be withdrawn. Xiao, his figure rose, and he was about to flee. I've been waiting for you. Ling Han smirked coldly. Peng, he exerted force in his legs, and completely unleashed his body technique. He shot toward Qin Shuang like a shooting star, his divine demon sword slashing over. Qin Shuang was focused on breaking out of the encirclement, so how could he have the energy to fight with Ling Han? He pushed out a palm toward Ling Han, wanting to force him back. He didn't dare to use his full power. Otherwise, if the large black dog caught up to him, he might not be able to unleash his speed, and that would be terrible. However, when the divine demon sword slashed over, Qin Shuang suddenly realized that something was wrong. The might of this strike from Ling Han was actually more than 100 times stronger than before. How was this possible? His expression changed abruptly, but it was already too late for him to change his move or increase his strength. Shua, a sword slashed over, and one of his arms was instantly severed. The momentum of the sword did not dissipate, and it slashed across his left rib, leaving behind a deep wound. Chapter 2675. Qin Shuang screamed. This blow was too damaging to him. However, Ling Han's attack was not over yet. His left hand turned into a palm, and Z9-colored light flashed, pressing toward Qin Shuang. Qin Shuang could no longer transform, and could only take it head-on. Pung with one palm pressed, Qin Shuang's whole body was blown apart. The power of this blow was not under the slash of the divine demon sword at all. Ling Han panted, but his figure did not stop, and continued to pursue with his sword. Qin Shuang was indeed bombarded by him extremely miserably. His whole body was torn apart, but his head was still intact, and he did not die. This was not a fatal wound for a celestial king. As long as Qin Shuang was given some time, he would soon be able to revive his limbs and body to restore his battle prowess. His first sword used the 9 transformations heaven art, which increased his battle prowess countless times, and the second palm used the 5-element thunder technique. Although the 2 celestial venerable treasured techniques did not operate at the same time, the interval was too short, and it still made his blood boil, extremely uncomfortable. But now was not the time to rest and reorganize. He should take advantage of the victory to pursue and destroy the enemy in one fell swoop. How could a head compete with Ling Han's speed? Ling Han caught up and added another sword strike. Qin Shuang's head was pierced by the divine demon sword, and his mind was broken, and he died. Ling Han withdrew his sword, and with a grab of his hands, he had already grabbed the spatial god tool on Qin Shuang's body. This formation is not bad. In the future, Grandpa Dog will no longer have to worry about someone running away. The large black dog also took away the formation control core on Qin Shuang's body, and he began to withdraw the formation. Ling Han was also interested in this formation, but he could not let the large black dog work for nothing. It would be difficult to ask for its help in the future. He probed into Qin Shuang's spatial god tool with his divine sense, and there was an alchemical pill in his hand. Although he was already a 5-star alchemist, he still could not recognize this alchemical pill, but he was sure that it overflowed with a powerful aura, even above Celestial King-level Great Pill. Thinking of what Qin Shuang said before, he only made a move after receiving a Celestial Venerable Pill from Ma Yuhai, then this was the Celestial Venerable Pill. What's the use of the Empyrean Pill? He knew it was a good thing, but he didn't know its use. What? Hurry up and give the Heavenly Sovereign Pill to Grandpa Dog. The large black dog immediately jumped over, shamelessly extending his paw. Ling Han hurriedly kept the Empyrean Dan. Get lost. You've already taken a set of formations. You still want this? We're talking about treasures, after all. The more the better. The large black dog's expression was extremely shameless. It was impossible for him to feel that way. Ling Han just raised his middle finger. Only then did the large black dog say, "The Heavenly Venerate Pill is refined by extracting the blood essence of a Heavenly Venerate, then fusing it with the will of their martial art. It's a precious medicine that's extremely beneficial to even celestial kings. However, it's best to let Lord Dog consume it. It can help Lord Dog enter the celestial venerable realm faster." Ling Han just chuckled. When this damned dog spoke, its eyeballs kept rolling around. Only a ghost would believe it. He put away Qin Shuang's celestial tool, and the large black dog also helped to suppress it, grinding away the will of martial art within it so that it could be easily devoured by the divine demon sword. In this regard, the large black dog didn't say anything. After all, Whether the divine demon sword could advance into the heavenly venerable realm or not was an important matter that involved whether the heavenly venerable fate-born could be revived. "Brat, do you want Grandpa Dog to accompany you?" the large black dog asked as he fiddled with the set of formation cornerstones that he had just obtained. This was very simple. There were only 4 pillars, but after they were buried into the ground, the area that the 4 pillars circled would become an independent area. "No need." Ling Han shook his head. It was only Ma Yuhai's words, so he naturally didn't take it to heart. 1 man and 1 dog headed in opposite directions. The large black dog still had to obtain divine metal. Following the start of the cooperation with the Wang clan, the day of the divine demon sword's advancement was getting closer and closer. This also caused the large black dog to be full of motivation. Because of the long delay on the road, when Ling Han arrived at the Great Flame Mountain, the day was already almost over. "He can't be here, right?" On the mountain, a great many people had specially rushed over to watch the battle. However, when the moon reached the middle of the sky, and the day was only a little bit away from passing, Ling Han still hadn't appeared. That was most likely impossible. Stage fright. It can't be, right? Previously, didn't Ling Han defeat Ma Yuhai with a single strike? Why is he afraid now? I can only say that previously, Ma Yuhai was careless, and Ling Han won by luck. Now that he knows that he can't get his way twice, he has admitted defeat. Who would have thought that he was actually this kind of person? Everyone was discussing spiritedly, and Ma Yuhai revealed a cold smile. Not only did he want Ling Han to die, he also wanted to redeem his own reputation. Otherwise, how could the little princess of the Wang clan possibly change her mind? He was very clear that it was impossible for Ling Han to come. If Qin Shuang made a move, Ling Han's corpse would already be lying in the wilderness. As for him, he had been waiting here under the watchful eyes of everyone. Naturally, it had nothing to do with Ling Han's death. Ma Yuhai brushed his hand and said, "Everyone, I've let everyone down. Please go back." Everyone got up one after another, and their hearts were full of contempt for Ling Han. He was actually afraid to fight. The period of 1 day is not over yet. What's the rush? A calm voice sounded. Everyone's footsteps paused. Ling Han, that's Ling Han, he finally came. Ma Yuhai's face changed dramatically. Why did Ling Han come? What about Qin Shuang? Did he not ambush anyone? If that was the case, then it was fine. Ling Han obviously wouldn't know his conspiracy. But if Qin Shuang made a move, and Ling Han still appeared here, then there would be a big problem. He couldn't stop trembling. What the hell happened? Ling Han strode forward and came to the top of the mountain, facing Ma Yuhai. He smiled. "You must be shocked to see me appear, right?" Ma Yuhai forced himself to calm down. "What should I be shocked about? I was the one who originally invited you to fight. You dragged your feet and only appeared now." Ling Han stared at Ma Yuhai, and after a good few breaths' time, he finally said, "You hired someone to ambush me on my way here, wanting to kill me. When I appeared alive, you must have been feeling very unsettled just now, right?" What? When they heard Ling Han's words, a commotion broke out in the surrounding crowd. Was it really so? It makes sense. Otherwise, why would Ma Yuhai dare to challenge Ling Han when he obviously suffered a crushing defeat and didn't have any obvious improvement? Hiss, this is too sinister. If the martial institution investigates the murderer and confesses everything, even Lord Ma Feng won't be able to protect him. At the very least, he will be expelled from the martial institution. That would be a great shame and humiliation. Ma Yuhai clenched his fists tightly. His heart was also full of apprehension. If Qin Shuang was really taken down and confessed the fact that the two of them conspired to kill the martial institution's disciples, then he would be in trouble. Just when he was in a trance, he saw Ling Han suddenly accelerate. With a quick jump, he arrived in front of him and then swung a fist over. Bang! Ma Yuhai was instantly sent flying by a slap. He spat out a mouthful of blood and a few broken teeth in midair. If he hadn't been so absent-minded, he definitely wouldn't have been sent flying with a single slap. But who asked his mind to be at war at this moment? Added with the fact that Ling Han's explosive speed was really too fast, Mayuhai was once again sent flying by a single strike from Ling Han. He fell to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. Just when he wanted to get up, he felt a weight on his face. He was forcefully stepped on by a foot. "I'll spare your life this time, but there won't be a next time," Ling Han said in an awe-inspiring tone. He stepped on a prodigy and swept his gaze across. Everyone couldn't help but lower their heads. They didn't even dare to look at each other. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.